Live at the Boston Public Library.
Final wave of bills. Already, Congress approved the first wave of bills earlier this month, with the remaining deal slated to fund the Pentagon, Labor, and State Departments, and more. Text for the new plans is expected to be released in the coming days, with lawmakers hoping to beat a shutdown deadline set for this weekend. Claudia Grisales, NPR News.
There are presidential primary elections being held in 5 states today, in Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Kansas, and Ohio. There's also a special primary election being held in 1 California district. It's to fill the remainder of the term of Congressman and former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He resigned last December. A new report says more than 1 million abortions took place in the U.S. last year. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports that's despite many states enacting restrictions or bans on abortion.
The report is from the Guttmacher Institute, a research organization that supports abortion access. Data scientist Isaac Matto-Zimmet says the number of abortions in 2023 is the highest it's been in over a decade.
That's the first time there have been over 1 million abortions provided in the U.S. formal healthcare system since 2012.
It's a notable increase given all of the state abortion bans implemented in the last 2 years. Matto-Zimmet said the rise in telemedicine abortion is part of the story. The U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments next week in a case that seeks to curtail that access. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News.
Lawyers for former President Donald Trump say that he may not be able to pay his bond for his New York civil fraud trial judgment while he appeals. They're asking a judge to waive the requirement for the bond or lower the amount. It's nearly $500 million. New York Attorney General Letitia James says Trump has until next Monday to come up with the cash or she will take action.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
The Attorney General could seek to freeze Trump's bank accounts or seize his New York properties. That could include Trump Tower. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 140 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. To unionize or not unionize, that is the question lawmakers on Beacon Hill will take up today regarding drivers for Uber and Lyft. The Eagle Tribune reports that a special legislative committee is scheduled to hear testimony on the proposals that reshape the employment status of ride-hailing drivers here in Massachusetts during a hearing at the State House. Supporters and opponents will make their cases to lawmakers to put that question and others on the November ballot. Mass Audubon and others are rallying on the Cape later today in support of more protection for horseshoe crabs. GBH's Mark Hers says this comes after a scheduled vote by state fish and game officials that's expected to increase limits on harvesting the unique animals.
Horseshoe crabs have lived unchanged in the seas for 400 million years, and their unusual blood is now taken by 2 local biomedical companies for use in drug testing. Hundreds of thousands more are harvested and used for bait by whelk fishermen. The Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission is expected to extend the number of days that the animals must be left alone to spawn on local beaches and to set clearer catch limits. Mass Audubon says climate change and over-harvesting are both potential threats to horseshoe crabs, and that migratory birds, including one threatened one, depend on their eggs for food. In Boston, I'm Mark Hers, GBH News 89.7.
Bruins host Ottawa at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball. The Red Sox play the Tampa Bay Rays at Fenway South. 40 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professionals, committed to acting in their clients' best interests. Learn more at letsmakeaplan.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and Friday, and now Wednesday as well. So we'll be back again tomorrow. And we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. No longer on Facebook, Jim.
Yeah, do you have any idea why? Neither
I have
do
no
I.
idea.
In any case, nice to see you, Marjorie.
Nice to see you, too.
Before Governor Healey took office, she pledged to be the most transparent, top executive the state has ever seen. She actually told us directly on the show she wouldn't claim exemption from mass public record laws. Well, now more than a year into her first term, and she's with us at the end of the month, by the way, I think on the 29th, she's taking out-of-state trips that the public doesn't know about in advance, and for the first time has refused to disclose the location of where she went even after the fact. When she took an out-of-state trip in February, the public only found out because Secretary of State Bill Galvin announced that he would be the acting governor since both Governor Healey and Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll were not here. As you know, though, neo-Nazis and hate groups have twice demonstrated outside her home in Arlington. That is obviously relevant in this situation. Plus, as we'll talk about later in the show with Meredith Goldstein from Love Letters, Healey's personal life has, let's say, become complicated since becoming governor.
It's weird if your partner is the governor. You can't go out places. You can't go out to dinner without people looking at you or oftentimes coming up to you. You can't turn on the TV without, seeing my face on the screen or reading about me in the paper. And I think that just is a really kind of surreal and experience for one's partner.
It is surreal. That, though, is what comes with the job. But just how much privacy should a politician be afforded? Do we deserve to know not just when our governor, for example, leaves the state, but where she goes to? And let's broaden this, Marjorie, at 877-301-8970 to call or text. How much do we have a right to know about every public official? For example, I was really upset when we found out the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Austin, had surgery and was in the hospital. Not only had not told the public, pretty important job, not even told his boss, the President of the United States. And to bring it back down to the ground level, when you see an elected official, I mean, she's talking about how hard it is to go out, Governor Healey is, and they're out to dinner. And whether you admire her or not, you want to respectfully say, hello, do you bother her in the middle of a meal? I'm not talking about protests, by the way. We talked about that in the past.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, do you walk over to somebody who's an elected official and interrupt them when they're doing whatever they're doing? They're walking down the street. They're having a meal. They're whatever. What's your rule of thumb?
Well, do you?
What?
What, do you?
Of course I do. Why? Of course I do. And of course you would not.
I would not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you might want to do something incognito if it was a person that the great.
What do you mean incognito?
Well, we had
put
the great
a mask
story,
on?
the great story about Brian McGrory and Monica Lewinsky. Remember that story?
Well, that's a different side. Are we allowed to tell that whole story? I don't know if it's. I don't know if we. Well,
statute of limitations.
Too late
Jim.
now. Here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
I hope if the other guy is listening, he's not upset with us in a minute because he's a fan of the show. Monica Lewinsky many years ago is having lunch, I think, with her agent at this gives it away, Legal Seafood in Washington. And Brian McGrory, before he was editor of the Globe, was the head of the Washington Bureau. And somebody who had something to do with Legal Seafood, Roger Berkowitz, the owner, heard, I don't think he was in D.C., I'm not sure if he was or not, but heard from his manager that Lewinsky was there. So he called Brian, and Brian ended up sitting down at the table next to Lewinsky, eavesdropping. I hope I got that mostly right. But I think that's that's a different kind of thing. That's a reporting kind of thing as somebody in the news. But we want to know, how do you feel about the whole Governor Healey thing? We're going to discuss it with her when she's on the show on the 29th. Are you upset that she doesn't say when she's leaving the state? I have to say, while I am totally sympathetic to how the neo-Nazi demonstrations changes everything, I think we're entitled to know in advance if Kim Driscoll, Lieutenant Governor, or the Secretary of State, he's the third in line, Bill Galvin, is running the show. Now, in terms of after the fact, we talked about this, and now she wouldn't disclose where she went in February. Until the neo-Nazis, again, my attitude would be that's totally inappropriate. We're entitled to know where our public officials go, particularly, by the way, since she has taxpayer-funded security as well.
That's correct.
She should.
State
However, let's assume the place that she and her partner, Joanna Lydgate, who's in this wonderful podcast, Love Letters with Meredith Goldstein, which we'll discuss later in the show, let's assume they were going to a place that they always go to. And it's a regular place. Should she disclose it? And then the next time she goes away, the neo-Nazis end up in wherever it is, Truro on the Cape, I'm making up the location. that complicates the whole situation. Having said that, do you think there's any reason we shouldn't know in advance when the governor of the state is leaving?
You know, I've been a reporter all my life, so my inclination is to say no. We got to know where she's going before she goes. And even afterwards, I mean, I think it's interesting.
Or that she's leaving at all. We didn't, until Galvin disclosed this thing, whenever it was, we didn't even know she had gone away.
That's right. Bill Galvin was in charge.
He wasn't. Well, he was in charge. That's how it works.
That's right. I remember when Deval Patrick.
Oh, by the way, I've been saying the wrong date. She's on the 26th at 11. My apologies, not 29th. Go ahead.
Yeah, remember who Dukakis left. This was years ago, of course, and Evelyn Murphy was in charge. I remember she announced that she was in charge, and
No, not just in charge. She proposed the settlement for the budget deficit. And by the way, you know who her advisor was? I'm pretty sure. Isn't our good buddy Michael Goldman? The governor leaves the state, and the lieutenant governor generally is just sort of filling the space. And Evelyn Murphy is a wonderful person. Evelyn Murphy proposes a budget solution because she was running for governor. That didn't go terribly well.
And the other story, when she was on vacation, I don't know why, but the Herald, the place I used to work for.
That was disgusting,
Boston
by the
Herald
way.
sent reporters down there to take a huge picture of her when she was jogging. When she was in Sanibel, Florida, or something like that. It wasn't very nice.
It wasn't very nice.
It wasn't very nice.
But they sent you out to ask her about it. Oh, no, they sent you to ask her another question.
Yes, they did.
Which we will ignore for this time.
But I don't think it's fair to take a picture of a middle-aged woman jogging and put her surreptitiously and then put it in the front page of the Globe.
Which really has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Well,
so we want to know,
story.
and by the way, it doesn't just relate to the governor, but obviously the governor is the one in the news right now. Do we have a right to know in advance when a leader is going to be unavailable to us, particularly somebody we elected or somebody like the Secretary of Defense? And after the fact, you're troubled by the fact that the governor is saying, what is her quote? This is personal. It's a personal trip. She doesn't say it's none of your business, but essentially it's none of your business. 877-301-8970.
Now, I went on the Globe comment section because it's always fun. A lot of comments. When you're up over 300, that's a lot of comments.
On the Healey story?
Yeah, on the Healey story.
Yeah.
And it's mixed.
What are they saying?
I mean, people are saying it's 2024. She could run the state from Costa Rica if she wanted to because she could be on Zoom or she could be on these meetings from far afield.
That's not the issue, with all due respect. The issue is not should she leave the state. The issue is, should we know about it?
Right, but this person is saying they're not upset because they feel as though
she can do as well.
She could run the state from anywhere. And this other person says, well, you know something, if you're going to run on a more transparency platform, then you should be more transparent. So they want to know where she is. And a lot of people are talking about the fact that the Nazis have gone after their home in Orange. It does change everything. But I think you wonder. It makes you wonder. Why don't you want to tell people where you went? Did you go someplace that was too swish? To some
no, I think
spa?
I'm speculating, but I think what I said, if she and her partner regularly, when they go away, go to one location.
Well, I think that's different.
I agree, but we don't know if that's the case. And by the way, why can't she say, one of the reasons I'm not disclosing it, because it's a location that my partner and I go to regularly, so we're going to choose not to disclose it.
I suspect it's because it was a swish spa. You know, one of those places that was in the Globe. You see the list of all the spas?
10 places in New England.
Maybe it was one of those swish spas, and that would.
How many of those you've been to?
Not any, but I would like to. Let me tell you, I would like to. They're not cheap, but it was like an extravaganza day.
Have you done one of those cold ice cube water things?
No, I have not. Have you?
It hurts. It really.
Have you done it?
Yeah, I've done it. I did it for like 10 seconds. You're supposed to stay in it a lot longer, and I'm told you get used to it. You know, it's like anything else. Once you do it for, do 10 seconds and 20 seconds and that sort of thing. But that's not really our topic. What is our topic? Our topic.
How much privacy should the governor have? Should we know where she's been when she comes back from where she's been? And should we know where she goes? You're also asking before she goes. Are you asking both or just after?
Let me be clear again. My attitude is there is no reason ever for the governor not to say that she's leaving the state when she's leaving the state. Then the second issue is telling us where she is, either before or after the fact. After the fact, I would say almost always you should be disclosing it. Unless it puts you at some risk down the line, as I said. And again, for those who haven't been paying attention, at least on 2 occasions, I think it's 2, these absolutely cowards, these neo-Nazis, and I say cowards, not only just because they're racist dogs, but because they cover their faces. And so if they're so proud of their racism, and this state is for us, not them, whoever us and that, well, us is obviously white men as opposed to them, meaning everybody else, then uncover your faces if you're so proud of your stand on the. They are total cowards, but they scare people. And I'm not suggesting they scare the governor, but they are scary. And I think that's relevant. 877-301-8097.
Let's go to Tom in Brockton. What do you think, Tom?
Hey, Tom.
Yeah, transparency is the key word when she ran for governor. But Jim, I agree with you about the Nazis where they cover their faces up. Mm-hmm. Would you hold that same standard to the people that rioted in 2020 that were called Antifa, that covered up their faces, that looted private businesses and burned public buildings?
Well, the answer is yes. However, I sure as hell hope where you're going, Tom, is you're not going to compare Antifa to, for example, the insurrectionists. The
other thing, Tom, is I'm not even sure. Antifa gets thrown around all the time. Where were the Antifa people rioting?
No, there were some limited settings.
I don't think so. I think it was a lot of people that were, people. President Trump likes to talk about Antifa all the time. And
Tom hung up, so the answer is he didn't have an answer to your question.
Last time I saw anybody from Antifa, they were down here in the Boston Common. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. They haven't been running around for a long time, as far as I know.
But the answer is, I think you raised a much more important point than I did, but the answer to his immediate question is, if you're protesting, if it turns out you're in Moscow and you're doing that vote at noon thing, I would have covered my face. They did not, most of those people. But unless you're personally at risk because of a courageous, principled stand, the answer is, of course, you should uncover your face.
A couple of people pointing out that the governor didn't tell us where she lived before the election. That was an odd thing.
When she moved to Cambridge from Charlestown.
I don't know why that was a big deal not to reveal, unless at that point she wasn't worried about the Nazis. And somebody else, was it Kathleen? Yeah, Kathleen from Avon. So remember when Ted Cruz got caught taking the trip to
Cancun
when Texas was in that, I think it was when the grid froze or something in the wintertime. There was some catastrophe in Texas, and he was spotted at the airport heading off to Cancun. That was not a good moment for Ted Cruz. Carrie from Amesbury, thank you for calling.
Hello, Carrie.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to say I agree with you that she should have to put in for her time off and give us a heads up when she's leaving the state, just like anyone would have to at work. You have to put in for time off. But as far as knowing exactly where she's going, I don't agree with that because she's entitled to private time and a break from her job. She can't be constantly on. That's not fair, and it's not safe. And if people wanted to harass her, they would know where she is. And if she tells us after the fact, then she wouldn't want to go to that place again.
Well, the last point you made is the one that I totally agree with. That is a tough situation. By the way, I would not agree with you, nor would I have said it to begin with, were it not for this neo-Nazi thing. I think you pretty much give up your right to privacy, sadly, when you choose to be a public official. I don't mean people should be taking photographs through your windows, Carrie, but when you're out in public, or you do or you don't?
Yes, you give up. I agree that you do give up your privacy when you become an elected public official, but I don't think we need to make it any worse because it's a really thankless job if you think about it.
No, you're right.
So if somebody wants to take an honest vacation and just get away and regroup and come back better, good, let them.
Carrie, let me ask you, though, I think Governor Healey, whether people support her politically or not, is generally a pretty well-respected person in Massachusetts. Let's assume it was Donald Trump we were talking about instead. And Donald Trump said, I'm not going to disclose where I am because it's a personal matter. I'll tell you what my position would be. I'll decide if it's a personal trip after you tell me where you went, as opposed to meeting with Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, at Mar-a-Lago. So I think we give her a little more leeway than we'd give people we're not so trusting of, because I think virtually everybody thinks she's an honest, forthright person. You know, Carrie?
Absolutely, but there should be checks and balances in place that red flags would go up if an elected official were headed to somewhere that they shouldn't be. It shouldn't be up to the general public to have to police that. So we don't really need to know that.
Yeah, but you can't police something you don't know. I mean, again, when she left most recently, forget disclosing after the fact, were it not for Bill Galvin, who was the acting governor, saying, I'm the acting governor, we wouldn't have even known that she was not around. But Carrie, that was an excellent call. Thanks for your thinking. We appreciate it.
Okay, here's Rob from Hudson. I ran into Charlie Baker in a hotel elevator in New Orleans 2 years ago. It was about 5 on a Friday afternoon, and I don't remember anybody saying he'd be out of town at 5 on a Friday afternoon. I'm okay with that, particularly with the awful things he said about Jim. There are a few more Jim texts here.
I'm sure there
Joel
are.
from Connecticut thinks that maybe we should install trackers on GBH radio hosts so we know when they're out slinking around the prepared food areas at Whole Foods. And somebody else wants to know if you're worried about people spying on you, Jim, while you're slithering around Cambridge, forced to buy your own birthday cake.
Well, by the way, I'm surprised it's actually I did have to buy my own birthday cake at Flower, and then I couldn't park. If you're recent listening to the show, we're 15 minutes in. I can't believe it took that long.
They have your number, Jim.
There's a modest difference between me not liking people knowing what I'm doing and where I'm going, which I do not. I am not an elected official. I'm a private citizen who is lucky enough to host a radio show with you. You would agree there's a little difference, obviously, yes.
Yes, so there's
now, when I was a city councilor, there was huge interest in what I was doing. Actually, none. There was not only no interest in what I was doing in my private life, there was no interest in what I was doing in my public life. Exactly.
Well, you weren't that interested either. It was all about the food, the free food, as I recall.
Free food Monday night from S&S
Deli.
Bring shopping bags.
Okay.
We got to take a break, Marjorie.
We have to take a break. We are talking about how much privacy a politician should be afforded.
Have you answered the question, by the way? It just occurred to me.
I said at the beginning, being a reporter all these years, my instincts are to know where she is, but I think this is maybe just a kind of immediate thing more than regular Joe and Jane's, who think she should be entitled to her personal life, and that's what the governor said in the Globe. Anyway, we're talking about that for a few more minutes. Our number is 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, the four characters in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play Cost of Living are isolated by disability or poverty. They want love, they want dignity, they want understanding and care. What they don't want is pity. We'll talk to two of the actors starring in the production, which is on stage now in Boston. That's on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Brown University pre-college programs, where high school students can prepare for college success, experience college life, and make new friends from around the world. More than 300 courses are available. precollege.brown.edu. And Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away, an exhibition featuring over 700 historic artifacts from the Holocaust. Now open at the Castle at Park Plaza in Boston. More at theauschwitzexhibition.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Dregan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library today. Is today Tuesday?
Yep.
And tomorrow and Friday. And we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I just want to confirm, since I got the date wrong, the governor would be with us on the 26th, which is a Tuesday right here, 11 to 12. And I've got very good news, by the way. Our favorite satirist on the planet is going to be with us on Friday, but even better, that's Andy Borowitz. Even better than that, the Borowitz report, as of this morning at 11:04, is back. And talk about an anticipation of the
New
election.
Yorker.
No, just independently.
Oh, independently. Oh,
independently.
Okay.
It's great.
Because he was on the New Yorker for years, and he was great there.
Andy Borowitz will be with us at the library on Friday. 877-301-8970. We're talking about how much we, the great unwashed, are entitled to know about when our public officials are not where we expect them to be in state, for example, in terms of Governor Healey, and are we entitled to know where they're going, either before the fact, and I can argue that at the beginning, maybe it's not as important, but at least after the fact, and generally she is disclosed after the fact. She has said it's private business what she did in February, and she's not disclosing it, and we want to know what you think. And by the way, while we're using her as the jumping off point, obviously because she's in the news and she's local, it applies to, I think, anybody who's a leader in the public sector. How much do you believe, as a member of the public, you're entitled to know?
Well, Jason from Duxbury wants to know if she was hiking on the Appalachian Trail. And that, of course,
explain
is a
what that means
to the former governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford, who was, when he was missing for days from the governor's office, he claimed, or his staff claimed, that he was hiking on the Appalachian Trail and thus could not be reached. But in fact, he was visiting, I believe,
Brazil?
South America.
Somewhere in Brazil.
He had a love interest down there.
Was his love interest the Madame of Choiset or whatever it is Prince Will is?
That's the one.
What's her name?
We're going to talk about that later.
What is her name?
The Marchioness de Chambray or something like that.
Chardonnay.
Yeah, she's not, these Brits, they can't be like Susan Jones. They have to be the Marchioness de Chambray.
Of what?
I think it's the Marchioness de Chambray or something like that.
I don't think so, but it's close enough.
And most people here in our text are saying it's none of our business. The state was covered by a substitute. We don't own her. Joanne from New Bedford, as long as somebody else is in charge, I don't care. Here's an interesting one that's kind of splitting the baby. Aaron from Lakefield says, I agree with Jim. If the governor is leaving for a personal trip, the public should know she's leaving, but not where she is going.
Right.
How about that?
Well, except my position is after the fact. Well, if it's a personal thing, even after the fact, it's a closed question. Grant in Arlington, Arlington. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Grant, welcome.
Hello. Hey, Jim.
Hi.
My comment is, in Arlington, we're debating a warrant article in an upcoming town meeting about actually protest in front of private homes. Because we have the governor resides in our town, and she lives in a very sedate neighborhood, a quiet street off of a fairly quiet street. So we have these Nazis protesting out in front of her house. So my view is she deserves some sanctuary in that place. Her family, her neighbors should be able to have a moment of quiet. If somebody wants to protest on the town common, they can. But, in terms of, as an elected official, that she should have some sanctuary. And I hope our town decides to support that.
Are you a town meeting member?
No, I am not.
Okay. I have to say, I can't remember the specifics. I'm sure you know of this, Grant. We talked to Mayor Wu a lot about the protest outside her house. And I believe, Marjorie, correct me if I'm wrong, that the regulations were changed in the city where you can't demonstrate before 9 a.m. as opposed to early. Having said that, Grant...
the neighbors were really upset.
I know,
there were
but
bullhorns and screaming at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I'm sure the neighbors in Arlington, where the governor lives too. But Grant, I don't know enough about what the proposal is at the town meeting. There is a constitutional right for people, sort of Nazis in Skokie kind of thing from years ago. Does that... I am totally sympathetic.
The Nazis were allowed to march.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has ruled that in front of a private house can be regulated if the option for other speech is available.
I see.
So on the town common, on any public event, as you guys have spoken about, so in that sense, why is protest in front of a private house a key element of speech?
Well, if you're right about the Supreme Court, and I'll defer to you, then I'm with you. I'm interested. When is the town meeting happening? I'm curious.
Our town meeting happens in late April.
Okay.
Runs as long as it runs.
We'll stay on top of it. Call us back when that happens. Grant, thank you for adding that to the conversation. We appreciate it.
Some people have mentioned the fact that the governor's gay and it's not safe for homophobes to know where she is or where they've been. I don't know. Is that a factor in this? I don't know. I
have no idea if it's a factor for her. I don't think it's sadly irrelevant. There are people who are haters, particularly in the era of Trump. There are a lot of really dangerous people, but that doesn't mean that elected officials on any level should be able to hide out. They obviously need more security. And by the way, when she goes away, even on private things, it is totally, she being the governor, it's totally appropriate, even if it's a personal trip, as this thing in February was, she's entitled to and should have state trooper protection. Obviously, she's still the governor when she's leaving the state. 877-301-8970. Robert and Lowell, hey.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
A couple of things. First of all, Jim, I think with you there should be an exception. You are not a public servant, but when you leave, I think we do have a right to know someone of your stature where you are and, frankly, what you're doing. Marjorie, not so much.
Thank you.
But anyway.
Okay. Thank you for that, Robert. Go ahead.
But anyway, a couple of things. First of all, going to the Secretary of Defense, I thought it was outrageous that he didn't inform his boss,
so
the
did
President
I.
of the United States. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone in the second administration, crossing my fingers there will be one. But so there's that. Then, Jim, I don't want to correct you, but I'm pretty sure Mark Sanford's mistress was from Argentina.
Argentina.
Oh, you're right. I think you were totally right.
Argentinian.
Wait a second. Wasn't there a Brazilian bombshell who's somebody... Was it the Speaker of the House and the Brazilian?
I'm sure there was.
I'm sure there was. Robert, that was an excellent call. Thank you very much. Nicole, do you mind? I think there's a Brazilian bombshell with a former Speaker of the House. Wait a second. Wasn't there in the harbor or the whatever there is in D.C. and...
Oh, Fannie Flagg? Was that
no,
Fannie
that's
Flagg?
I don't know who they are.
I don't know.
Okay.
You can't keep track of all these colorfully named.
Zoe sends us a note. 90% of my job is searching Brazilian bombshell for Jim. I swear to God. It is true. That occurs to me more often than it should. Thank
Joe
you,
from
Zoe.
Plymouth has a good idea.
What is it?
All politicians should leave the state, not tell us, and never return.
Well, I don't think people have the antipathy towards the leaders in the state that maybe existed a while ago, at least most of them. So I don't think, by the way, I'm assuming that people, I'm one of them, who have great admiration and respect for the governor. I do think we should know when she's leaving the state in advance, even if in certain circumstances she doesn't tell us where we're going. I mean, do you not agree with that, by the way? Forget being a reporter. Aren't we entitled to know that Bill Galvin or Kim Driscoll is running the state?
Yes.
Particularly if what happens if something serious happens, there's an emergency. You want to know who the boss is.
No, I think you do need to know when she's out of state, but you don't need to know necessarily where she's going.
Well, necessarily.
Right.
I
mean, it's different if you're going on vacation.
Well, I don't even think it's different if you're going on vacation were it not for these neo-Nazis. If this question had arisen 2 years ago, my position would be, we have a right to know where you are, wherever you are, personal or not. You decided to run for public office. Hopefully people won't treat you poorly, but in light of these demonstrations outside her house, if it really is personal travel, as she suggests February was, then I think she's probably right.
We're one of the few states the nation does not have a governor's mansion.
Yeah, are we the only state, or there are very few?
Somebody texted and said we're one of 5. I'm not sure if that's right, but and that was a big issue during Jane Swift.
Of course,
when she
explain
was the
why for people who don't know.
Jane Swift had a 3-hour commute in the morning.
North Adams, is that where she lived?
And a 3-hour commute at night. It was ridiculous.
Was it North Adams?
I don't know where she lived.
Yeah.
She lived up there somewhere in the Berkshire by that whole 6 hours round trip. It was ridiculous, and that's why she ended up having to take the helicopter home when her little baby was sick. But anyway.
And by the way, for whatever it's worth, every columnist in town, well, it's true, you deserve credit. When she took the helicopter home for a pretty good reason, because her kid was sick, every columnist, Globe and Herald, trashed her with one exception, Herald columnist Marjorie Egan.
Because I think if you, I mean, obviously she wasn't entitled to do that. But think about it. If you mothers out there, you had a baby that was practically a newborn, and the kid had 104 temperature, and you were really worried about the baby, and you had the access to a helicopter that's going to get you home in a half hour, I think I would have done it too.
I was very proud of your stance. I thought it was great.
Taking the flack afterwards.
Let's take one more here.
Renee in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Renee.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We can. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks. I am a small town elected official.
Oh.
I prefer not to say which town that
Okay.
I'm in. And I'm also a woman of color. And I will tell you that I have gotten hate emails and hate texts and hate whatever because, I tend to be more liberal than the average person in my area. And you know what? I totally respect the governor's need for privacy. It is scary. Guess what? I don't get any protection.
That is scary.
People are in my town or in my area, and you have no idea. And this is not the same as it used to be. I mean, I don't know. I'm completely sympathetic to the governor, and I think that as an elected official, it is really hard to sometimes want to be part of this when there is so much vitriol directed toward you.
Can I tell you, I'm so glad you called.
That's a great call.
But Renee, you were part of, I assume, a legislative body. Is that fair to say, a city council or a town, whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, well, and again, I hope I'm not sounding unsympathetic to the travails of being any public official in these horrible days. But she's the boss. That's a lot different. If a state legislator chose to leave town, as they do for 5 months every other year here, I'm fine with that, and I'm obviously fine in your situation. Don't you think it's a little bit different when you're talking about the one person who is in charge of a jurisdiction, a mayor, a governor, whatever? Does that do anything for you or no?
No, actually, I think that we should all be treated similar or equal. I mean, I'm not asking for police protection, but I do think that if she's asking for privacy, I don't have to tell people where I go on vacation. Why is it any different for her?
Renee, we really, really appreciate your call. Thanks for adding your perspective.
I just want to point out that Ingrid from Somerville has really captured the whole zeitgeist here. She says, who cares about the governor? Where is Kate Middleton.
We're going to get to that at the end of the show. We are.
Yeah, we're going to talk about with Sue O'Connell. And later in the show, because there seems to be an obsession with where Kate Middleton is. She, of course, is the future Queen of England. But we're going to talk about that later. Up next, we're going to talk with Trenni Casey, our sports authority from NBC Sports Boston. The March Madness time is here. But the women's teams have sold out the men's teams before. They sold out first, is what I should be saying. We're going to talk about that and other sports news with Trenni Casey. She's next. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Iran's mandate that women cover their hair has caused widespread protest. Now, even some clerics are against it.
I swear to God, even if our society loses the hijab altogether, it is more honorable than making this a security issue.
But government surveillance of women in Iran is about to get even stricter. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And ABCD, a nonprofit organization providing low-income residents with health services, including reproductive health care, committed to helping people get from where they are to where they want to be. BostonABCD.org/empower. And Boston Ballet, presenting Cinderella. New to Boston audiences, this dreamlike production features spectacular dancing and newly restored costumes and sets. On stage now through March 24th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now live at the Boston Public Library by a woman who says it is not Kate Middleton in that farm stand video.
Jim,
she's Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston.
If the Prince and Princess of
Yes,
Wales
yes.
walked through the Boston Public Market after their kids played soccer, would you just be like, oh, I'm not going to take a picture of them? We haven't seen Kate since December, but we'll just let her walk by.
That's
Either
right.
it's one of two things. It is them, and the palace bought out the farm stand and put scene actors in there.
Excellent point.
To not
Crisis
take
actors.
pictures, crisis actors, to not take pictures of them.
Yeah.
Or, more likely, it is not the Prince and Princess of Wales, because everyone would be like, oh my God, there's the woman we all thought was dead 4 days ago.
How about that woman we had on the show, who the master of disguise?
That's right.
The head of the disguise unit, CIA. She tricked George H.W. Bush.
Who used to
so
run
maybe
the
it's not only
CIA.
not Kate Middleton, it's probably some whatever.
Okay.
Wearing a
I mean,
mask.
Obama was on Downing Street the other day.
what is
Maybe
that
he
about, by the way? We don't know about
well,
that
we thought
either.
he was looking for Kate.
Okay, fine. We're talking.
Now,
Literally, I spend most of my days prepping for my show, reading about Kate Middleton. Like, I go on
Apparently, yes.
Twitter to look up something, and I'm like, oh my God, where is Kate?
Okay.
Well, I hate to break the Kate moment here, but can we talk a little sports just for a few seconds?
Sure.
Okay. The girls' tickets.
Women's.
Excuse me. Women's
really,
tickets to
Marjorie.
March Madness sold out faster than the men's.
Well, Caitlin Clark.
hold on. So the way the women's tournament is run is different than the way the men's tournament is run. So the men's tournament has neutral sites for all of their rounds. So, like, I'm a Marquette fan. Marquette is playing in the South Regional.
They beat Providence College.
They did beat Providence College, but they lost to UConn in the championship game. And so they play their first and if they make it to the second round, their first and second round games in Indianapolis. Like, UConn plays their first and second round games, I think, in Brooklyn, New York. Whereas the women, their top seeds get home games. So they host the first and second rounds.
So it's not that big of a deal?
Well, it's not that big of a deal. They still sold out in 30 minutes.
No.
Like, every single seat for every single session, because it's not just Iowa and whoever Iowa plays. It's Iowa and whoever else is, like, in that region. So they're playing there, and those tickets sold out. And they are going out on the secondary market. They're going for $500 and some.
I love it.
Yeah, but you know what I worry about? By the way, this is thrilling, and we were both really excited about this morning. But I worry it's a Caitlin Clark phenomenon. It's not a women's college basketball phenomenon. Is it?
I mean, according to the people who watch much more, listen, I don't even watch a lot of men's college basketball. I watch Marquette, right? I'm a Marquette fan, so if Marquette's playing, I watch them. But the people who follow women's college basketball very closely, they say this is not just a Caitlin Clark.
Oh,
like they
great.
say, if you go somewhere, you at the very least, you probably know 2 big-time female basketball players right now. You know Caitlin Clark, and you probably know Angel Reese from last year's national championship game. She plays for LSU. She's this great player. Her and Caitlin Clark had this sort of rivalry that developed. They were both sort of in each other's faces at times during that national championship game. They could actually meet, I think, sooner than the Final Four. I think they could meet in the round of 16 or 8 this time. Iowa has a very tough ticket. Paige Bucher is at UConn. Like, that's,
She's been there.
She's been there for a while. She's like, so there's more household names. Like, if I asked you to name me 2 big-time men's college basketball players, even one, could you name me one?
No, and here, let me tell you.
At least you can name one on the women's side.
The really hopeful thing, beyond what you just said about the women's thing, which I hadn't thought about until I was reading in anticipation of you coming today, is the women stay for 4 years. Most really high-quality men's players play 1 year, and by the time you sort of know who they are or don't, they're gone. They're in the pros. Yeah. So the potential, particularly now, in the wake of Clark, to really celebrate this game is huge.
Well, and they, you would think, and I think that was maybe a little bit of the hope with the NILs, that maybe guys would stay a little bit longer, stay in school longer. But the money, if you're a big time, top tier, top 5 NBA draft pick, like the money that you would make, like maybe there are boosters who would pay you what you can make in the NBA, but you're going to make so much more in salary and endorsement deals in the NBA than you are in college. So that your best college players still, on the men's side, still bolt. Whereas like Caitlin Clark, by some metrics, people think that at least in terms of like what boosters and like things NIL could pay her, she could actually make more in college than she can in the WNBA, which is a sad indictment on the WNBA.
Well, it's really like a perfect storm, because not only do you have Caitlin Clark, who hopefully will last a while, because from what I read last night, Iowa may not even make it into the Final Four, as great as she is.
No, it's got like the toughest. They have like the toughest draw.
This comes 2 weeks after, this is horrible, I don't remember the woman's name, that great thing with Steph Curry and the woman shooting.
Brianna Iasco.
That was fabulous.
Yeah,
and
the three-point contest. Sabrina, not Brianna. I was confused.
Whatever. The highest profile thing at the All-Star game. And everybody in America was talking about. So maybe this is the moment. And also, this is really exciting, because I watched the Peyton Manning thing was it called Quarterback or whatever it was, where they profiled 3 quarterbacks in a really intimate way. There is
they're doing this with women's basketball,
including Caitlin Clark.
So it's Caitlin Clark, South Carolina's Camila Cardoso.
Right.
South Carolina, by the way, undefeated for the 2nd year in a row going into the NCAA tournament. So they're the prohibitive favorite to win the women's title. And then you have UCLA's Kiki Rice. So you've got 3 women who are going to be featured in Peyton Manning. His side project now has this production company called Omaha. Which is, if anyone's a really big football fan, he used to have this line. He used to have this play called The Line of Scrimmage. He would say Omaha, Omaha, and it became like a thing. So he's Omaha Productions. He's also the one who's trying to put Bill Belichick and Nick Saban together.
For what?
On TV to kind of do you have the Manning cast on Monday Night Football. They're trying to do something similar. I don't know if it'd be college football or for pro football, but they're trying to get Belichick and Saban to sign on with Omaha Productions.
Okay, so let's hear her voice for a second, because here's Caitlin Clark speaking to ABC News about the quote surprising misconceptions many have when it comes to women's sports.
Yeah, I think it still does surprise me that people get a little distraught about women being competitive and getting into little arguments on the court or having a little trash talk, and that's how it should be. I think more than anything, it's surprising you guys didn't know this is how women's sports are played. Come on.
I just realized, didn't she take a lot of heat last year when she did
her and Angel Reese.
But the guys do this all the time, and nobody ever talks about that.
Yeah, people thought that the way her and Angel, conducted themselves was classless.
Oh God.
And that, because I think it was Caitlin Clark. I think it was Angel Reese. Maybe both kind of did this face wagging thing, and they got in each other's faces when one would hit a big shot. That's a competitive nature. That's what,
it's
again,
trash
that's
talk, and that they all the
how
guys
many times do you see a defensive lineman sack a quarterback and stand over him, or Aaron Rodgers with the discount double check, belt. the championship belt thing that he did anytime he scored a touchdown. And that's always okay. But it's like when women do it, well, that's not very ladylike.
I don't like to correct a guest, but on this show, it is Vice President Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yes.
If you want. Now, can we talk about that, by the way? Apparently,
absolutely.
the only person that Robert Kennedy has not asked to be his vice president is me.
Yeah,
I
me
think
neither.
I'm the only
Me
one. It's
neither.
two of us then.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, on his short list, and we haven't heard, Scott Brown was asked.
Yep,
And
refused.
Senator Brown said
Yeah.
he wasn't going to do it. Mike, whatever his name is, from the Discovery Channel and CNN, Mike somebody, he turned it down too. Rodgers, we haven't heard whether he said yes or no, correct?
We have not heard whether he said yes or no. And the other possible candidate, another former athlete,
right.
Jesse Ventura, the former Minnesota governor and pro wrestler Jesse Ventura, are now apparently on RFK Jr.'s short list to be named vice president. He will make the announcement on March 26th.
He will.
But because of this, Aaron Rodgers is finding himself in some very hot water. Pamela Brown and Jake Tapper of CNN released a story last week that two sources, one of whom was Pamela Brown, another who they granted anonymity to so that that person would not be harassed in the public circle. But both of these people, and they have confirmed their reports, said that Aaron Rodgers talked at length with them about Sandy Hook conspiracy theories, that he talked to Pamela Brown, who held it, did not say anything about it because, listen,
She's a CNN
She's
reporter.
a CNN
and
reporter,
anchor.
but if he's a football player, if you're not saying it publicly, he pulled her aside at the Kentucky Derby in 2013 when he was still with the Green Bay Packers and asked her if she had heard about how these were crisis actors and the parents were crisis actors. And did you hear about the three men dressed in black who were in the woods near Sandy Hook when the shooting took place? Those are government officials. This was a hit job
It's
by
Alex
the government.
Jones, Redux,
it's
essentially.
basically Alex Jones. And the interesting thing is, Aaron Rodgers, after this report came out, many people are saying, well, why would you say it now? He still hasn't said it publicly. But now he's thrust into a possible position of power where you could sway if he decides, you know what? Forget the New York Jets. I don't want to be a quarterback anymore. I want to be vice president of the United States. And we know how people in this country like to aimlessly follow celebrities. If for some reason that ticket, takes votes away from one, side or the other, there are bigger ramifications than just
he's a public figure regardless. I mean, he's not a
But
private sector
I can
worker.
understand when he says something to Pamela Brown at the Kentucky Derby 11 years ago, why she doesn't immediately come out and talk about it.
I'm sorry.
There's no reason. It's a private, right? He didn't say it publicly anywhere. But once your name, and because he did not say no, if he would have said right away, thanks RFK, but I'm not gonna run for vice president. I'm gonna be the quarterback for the New York Jets. I want to win a Super Bowl. I want to play football. To me, then it becomes a story that they probably don't share. But when he doesn't take his name out of the political arena and he's being tossed around as a possible, co-leader of our nation, then to me it's fair game. It's fair game what he said, and people deserve to know what the beliefs you hold behind the scenes.
There was a great tweet yesterday. I hope I get the name right. It said when Aaron Rodgers is elected vice president, Zach Wilson will be third in line for the presidency. He's the backup quarterback. For the New York
one of our
Jets.
staff members, Aiden, is shocked that RFK Jr. hasn't used Cheryl Hines to try to get Larry David on the ticket.
Yeah, I
That's,
don't
of
think
course,
that's
curb
happening
your
anytime soon.
enthusiasm. No. I don't see the two of them.
That we'll know. We'll know.
Together.
What is today? March 19th. We'll know a week from today. We will know who
unless
RFK
he can't
is
find
naming.
anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
By the way, I was watching Anderson Cooper, as I do every night, or I record it every night at least. And there's this show going to be on CNN about Alex Jones. It's going to be, on HBO Max. And they played last night a mother whose...
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
Whose son was killed in Sandy Hook on an elevator with a woman who asked her about the little necklace she had on. It was a picture of her son. And she said, oh, that's my son. And he was killed in a school shooting at Sandy Hook. And the woman next to her says, that's not true. You're lying. That didn't happen to the mother. I mean,
it's horrific.
Yeah,
and
it's
it should
horrific.
be pointed out, I started saying this and then I went off on a tangent. Aaron Rodgers did not deny saying that to Pamela Brown. He released a statement and said that he respects the victims and it was a terrible tragedy and all these things, but he never said that he did not spout those conspiracy theories to Pamela Jones and the second
The
unnamed
guy's a
source.
vaccine skeptic too, so this is not that out of character.
And he lied about having a vaccine.
Oh yeah, he
right?
said he was inoculated.
Yeah.
Because of course, as a baby, Aaron Rodgers Rodgers, like all of us, got immunized, and so he said he was inoculated.
Tricked his teammates who are in very close contact into thinking at the height of the pandemic that he had been vaccinated.
I can't believe this is a guy that I used to routinely root for on a Sunday
Wisconsin,
and liked,
obviously.
and I covered him. I covered him for a couple of years in Green Bay.
Did you ever interview him out there?
Oh yeah, I did one-on-ones with him, and I
wanted him to be host of Jeopardy.
I did too.
He was great on Jeopardy.
I thought he was charismatic. I always admired the fact that he did a lot with. There was a foundation back home called the MAC Fund, Milwaukee Athletes Against Childhood Cancer. And he would oftentimes go in back rooms, not in front of the cameras, nobody allowed, sit with these kids, sign things for them. He always met with kids. He was always very polite to reporters. Like I got along with him pretty well, and he liked charity events I ever did with him. And just what has happened, the Joe Roganization or the Alex Jonesization of him, it is sickening to watch. And like, fine, you don't want to believe in vaccines or whatever, fine, go do what you need to do. But the Sandy Hook thing, that one put me over the edge.
So
He's a garbage human.
Let's talk about another quarterback potential. This is not as serious. I still have only watched one episode of Dynasty. I'm going to watch the other 9 at some point. I haven't got Dynasty, not from 40 years ago. Dynasty about the Patriots, 10-part series
on Apple TV Plus.
Last night, I'm driving home, and I hear, it may have been on NPR, that when they're talking about the Super Bowl, that the Patriots lost to my home team.
They did.
The Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
One of the great plays was that the quarterback,
Statue
whose
of
name
Liberty.
is Nick Foles, is that what it's called?
I think it's called the Statue of Liberty. Yeah.
He became the receiver. He caught a touchdown. They then play Al Michaels, who is the broadcaster's
his call,
broadcast
call of the game.
His call, and it says something like, the ball goes to so-and-so, and he throws it to Nick Foles for a touchdown.
Yep.
In Dynasty, it's the exact same thing, except the name Foles,
Nick Foles is taken out.
excised. And
So
the conventional wisdom is
this
is Brady's jealousy.
I didn't catch this until you guys sent the story today. And so it's now been about 2 weeks. So we actually watched, I don't know if I told you guys this, we watched episode 9 and 10 at work and then had a Q&A with the director, Matt Hamachek, afterwards.
Yes, you did. Was it depressing, 9 and 10?
No, at 9 and 10, episode 9, I have to think back. I missed the first part of episode 9, but episode 9 is really where you kind of start to see the deterioration of the relationship between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Episode 10, while it is kind of sad, but episode 9, I think they win a couple Super Bowls. I think it might be the 28-3, or that might be in episode 10. But you kind of start to see you see their last couple Super Bowls and how Bill Belichick really was a genius behind that win against the Rams, how he changed the defense after they played one style of defense all year, he changed the defense in the Super Bowl to fluster a high-powered Rams offense, which is exactly what he did in the first Super Bowl against when they were the St. Louis Rams. So they bookended their Super Bowls with wins against the Rams. And honestly, I found myself emotional watching episode 10. Listening to Tom Brady talk about the dissolution of the relationship and making the hard choice to leave New England and how it was his home and how everything was perfect. Like, I'm watching in this room full of colleagues and I'm tearing up listening to Tom Brady talk about the end and listen to his teammates talk about what he meant to everybody. And to be honest, I didn't catch that they took that out of the call.
So what's the conventional wisdom? That Brady asked for it to be taken out?
So the thinking is that there is history there. Like, after the Super Bowl, Brady wouldn't shake Nick Foles' hand.
I didn't know that. Is that true?
And then when they played the Eagles again, he didn't shake his hand.
Why?
And it was like a big thing. Nobody quite knows. Some people speculate that Tom Brady, because Nick Foles was the backup quarterback. Carson Wentz got hurt, right?
Yes.
Did I remember that correctly?
Yeah.
Carson Wentz got hurt, and Nick Foles filled in for him. So it was sort of like, it was a little reminiscent of the first Super Bowl Brady ever played in. The Patriots should have run away and beat the Eagles pretty easily. Nobody thought the Eagles were going to win the Super Bowl, and it was a high-scoring game. I think Brady threw for 534 yards.
Yeah.
It was an incredible back-and-forth game, and they got beat on this Statue of Liberty play by the Eagles. And the thought process is that he feels like he lost to such an inferior player, and that he would have had 7, and that they were so close, and yada yada yada. And that was also the Malcolm Butler Super Bowl. So that's when Malcolm Butler didn't play. We still don't know why. It's like still under wraps.
Statue of Liberty play. Why?
I don't remember why.
What's it called? It's like from 100 years ago, where the quarterback holds the ball back like this. If you're watching, a halfback or somebody, a running back,
comes like it's like the torch.
Then the quarterback runs out and becomes an end and catches the ball.
Why Statue of Liberty?
Because I think he's standing there like it looks like the Statue of Liberty.
Okay, looks like the Statue of Liberty.
We only have a couple minutes left, and I don't want to leave people hanging because last week we talked about Dallas Seavey, who got penalized 2 hours in the Iditarod race because he didn't adequately gut a moose.
That is correct. He did not adequately gut a moose.
Here is the now 6-time Iditarod winner, Dallas Seavey, explaining how he handled his run-in with a moose during this year's race. This is on CNN World Sport. Here it is.
There we stopped with a 2,000-pound animal right by the front of my sled. It started, trying to stomp on my dog. And first shot was not necessarily a killing shot, just something to try to get the moose out of the team and away from, the damage it was doing. When the gunshot went off, the dog's
actually, he's not that interesting. Okay, but so he doesn't gut it and he gets penalized 2 hours.
Well, he did gut it. He just didn't adequately gut it.
That's right.
But he won the damn thing.
But he won it. He was penalized. So very quickly, last week we talked about this. He was penalized 2 hours. So you get a 24-hour break in between legs. He had to wait 26 to start the next leg, and he still won his 6th straight Iditarod.
And you know what's interesting about this story?
Not 6 straight, 6 total Iditarod.
His father won. I read last night 3 Iditarods, and his grandfather didn't win. But that's sort of
there's like a family history there. And for those who are like, oh my God, he gutted a moose. This is so terrible. The moose, as he explained a little bit in that clip, came after his dogs. All of the sledders, all of the mushers carry guns in that event that they, listen, it's the Alaskan wilds, right? So you kill the moose, but what you have to do is you have to completely gut it so that all of the parts of the moose can be used to feed people, so that it doesn't go to waste. It's not just a rotting carcass.
I love
so it
that.
Actually is, it's the more humane thing. It's also the more environmentally safe, like the more, conservation. To do it that way, you give the meat to people, but he did not adequately do it, and people behind him hit the moose carcass and went over it and stuff, and he didn't adequately dispose and gut it.
Okay, so we only have a minute left. We're going to end the show today. We're going to talk to Sue about this in a minute because obviously it's the most important story in the world.
Kate Middleton.
And then at the end of the show, talk to our listeners about it. You hypothesize with great certainty at the beginning of the segment that it was not Kate Middleton.
I do not think it's Kate Middleton.
You really believe this?
I really don't.
And so what is going on as far as you know?
I don't know what's going on, but I don't know what they're hiding. But the fact, if she's fine and she's walking around a farm stand, why are we doctoring a picture the week before? But my bigger reasoning on this is you're telling me that the Prince and Princess of Wales, the princess who has not been seen in public since December 17th. Before Christmas, Jim. Before the holiday, the blessed holiday.
Yeah.
She's just going to walk through a public farm stand and one person in a car is going to take a sneaky video of her. She walks by a bunch of people. You think no one else is going to stop and be like, holy bleep, it's Kate. We found her, and stop and take pictures of her? That is not today.
Wow.
Okay.
Really
anyone famous who walked in here right now, I'd be like, oh my God,
Exactly.
oh my God. You take
So
your
would
phone
I.
out and you take a picture.
We're going to get to the bottom of this.
We
in a
are,
second
before
with
the
me,
show's
Maven,
over.
Sue
Nice to
O'Connell.
see you,
First, I
Trenni.
want to thank
Sue
Trenni
agrees with me.
Casey,
Spoiler alert.
anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Media Maven Sue O'Connell will indeed tackle the Kate Middleton issue and also.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Tanglewood, the summer home of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, bringing Beethoven, Broadway, and more to the Berkshires. You can plan your summer at tanglewood.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
I'm Senior Digital Producer Megan Smith, and you and I are listening to 89.7 W.
Voters are deciding key races in several states today. They include presidential nominating contests, even though President Biden and former President Donald Trump already have enough delegates to accept their respective parties' nomination. With an eye on the general election, Biden is visiting two crucial swing states, Nevada and Arizona, where He will attempt to address what polls have shown are some of the president's greatest weaknesses this election year: support among Black and Latino voters, immigration, and the economy. Here's NPR's Asma Khalid.
In Las Vegas, Biden will talk about his efforts to lower costs for American families. His domestic policy advisor, Neera Tanden, says the president will specifically focus on housing.
We know we need to increase housing supply to ensure that we can bring down the rents and the cost of homeownership. And that is the premier objective of this administration.
But a lot of this requires the help of Congress. Later in the day, the president
reached one of the last remaining peaceful enclaves in the Haitian capital.
The wealthy neighborhoods of Port-au-Prince look out over the city from the side of a mountain. For the most part, they had escaped the wrath of the country's gangs. At least 12 bodies were found strewn on the streets. Images show some of the bodies had bullet wounds. Gang leaders have long framed this as a fight between the rich and the poor, and they have long threatened to attack the elite where they live. And now the gangs seem to have gotten past police and private security to do just that. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Cap Haitian in northern Haiti.
Sentences are being handed down to former law enforcement officers in Mississippi for their roles in the torture of 2 Black men last year. Today, a federal judge ordered Hunter Elward to serve 20 years behind bars. Several co-defendants are to be sentenced this week and next. All 6 of the former officers pleaded guilty to several federal charges in August. They admitted subjecting Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker to racially motivated acts of torture in 2023. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow was up more than 200 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Environmental advocates are rallying on the Cape this afternoon, to call for more protections for the horseshoe crab. As GBH's Mark Hers tells us, it comes after a vote by state fish and game officials aimed at helping the 400-million-year-old species.
Hundreds of thousands of horseshoe crabs are harvested every year in Massachusetts by whelk fishermen as bait, and 2 biomedical firms also take their unique blood for drug testing. The Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission is expected to extend prohibitions on taking horseshoe crabs during their spawning periods. Current rules are based around the new and full moon when the animals spawn on local beaches. Mass Audubon says the new protections would only be a first step to protect the living fossils whose nutritious eggs are a vital food source for thousands of migratory birds, including the threatened red knot. In Boston, I'm Mark Hers, GBH News 89.7.
Horseshoe crabs have blue blood. A sculpture of the man credited with freeing the Dominican Republic, Juan Pablo Duarte, was unveiled at the State House yesterday. The bust is on loan from the Dominican Republic at the request of the state senator Pavel Payano. His office says the artwork commemorates the increasing number of Dominicans elected to the State House. The Dominican Republic declared its independence from Haiti back in 1844. In sports, the Bruins host Ottawa at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball. Red Sox are inching closer to their home opener on April 9th against Baltimore, the best bar in Boston. Today they play the Tampa Bay Rays at Fenway South. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Insurance protects small businesses from retailers to tradespeople. Progressive covers a variety of business needs with a range of coverages. More at progressivecommercial.com.
Hey, it's Rowdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do now Tuesday and Wednesday and Friday, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Margie. I want to correct my mistake again from earlier. Excuse me?
It's a lot of corrections from Jim today.
I had the wrong date for the governor. She's coming here on March 26th. March 26th, the governor will join us at the library. We're now joined by local woman and noted royal watcher, Sue O'Connell. Sue is co-publisher of Bay Windows of the South End News, co-host of NBC 10's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30, following Meet the Press. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day to
you.
Of
course.
Well, Sue O'Connell, it's clear that the story of the hour, if not the day,
yes.
if not the week, is, of course, Kate Middleton. But before we get to Kate Middleton and where exactly she is, the former president apparently is very upset about the fact that no one, so far anyway, I think he's gone to 30 different companies, is willing to give him a bond for $454 million that he needs to pay because he was found liable of fraud, financial.
I believe we call it massive fraud.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yes.
That's a lot. That's a lot of fraud.
Money,
and he's probably very annoyed by the Attorney General of New York State. That's Letitia James. Here she is speaking to ABC News about seizing the former president's assets.
We are prepared to make sure that the judgment is paid to New Yorkers. And yes, I look at 40 Wall Street each and every day.
I'm sorry. That is the quote. Can we do this again? Let's hear it one more time. The second half is killer. Here's Letitia James, the AG of New York.
We are prepared to make sure that the judgment is paid to New Yorkers. And yes, I look at 40 Wall Street each and every day.
That is really in your face.
Imagine how this woman's got to be driving him crazy. She's a woman, and she is a black woman, and she is eyeing Wall Street.
Oh, she's a racist, we've been told by
that's right.
Trump.
And Trump also thinks that he didn't do anything wrong still, which is also the part. And I want to be clear about two things about talking about this case, because sometimes I talk to big business people about this. They're like, well, everybody exaggerates a little bit of this. I always famously tell the story of Stephen Mindich, who was the Boston Phoenix chairperson and owned a ton of property in Fenway. And he got one time called out by the Boston Herald because for the assessment from the city, he downplayed the value, but when the Red Sox wanted to buy what is now Marshall's, and he increased it. He said, that's what I'm supposed to do. But the egregious exaggeration and fraud that the Trump committed is well beyond somebody just rounding up a little bit. It is crazy. And the people who are owed this money are the New Yorkers, right? So she's trying to collect the money that he owes for the New Yorkers, and he cannot move forward with his appeal unless he pays this bond. And I'm shocked that someone who's been convicted of massive fraud can't find somebody, and who is famous for not paying his bills, right? Famous for not paying all sorts of people. He's been on Truth Social this morning, basically ranting, saying that, the judge, quote, wants me to put up the ridiculous fine, and then in caps, I did nothing wrong before I get a chance to appeal this crazed ruling first. It's like he has no concept. I keep going back and forth between whether Trump has no idea what he's saying or he completely knows what he's saying.
Did you watch CNN last night?
I did not.
CNN, George Conway, who
I've been following George
formerly is married
Conway
to Kellyanne Conway and used to be a supporter of Donald Trump at the beginning, said everybody knows that he is, quote, a narcissistic psychopath. He said, and his whole thing was the guy is seriously unwell. As I have to say, we've been saying, it doesn't excuse anything. But, speaking of 40 Wall Street, I just remembered as we were playing it, I had forgotten about this. Of all the grotesque things that Trump has done, and they are too great to mention, on 9/11, do you remember this? On 9/11, not a year, never would have been appropriate. After the World Trade Towers came down, he was bragging that he now owned the tallest building
in New York.
And by the way, it was wrong. It was not the tallest, but that's not even the point. Can you imagine a demented individual when thousands of people were killed in the worst attack on our soil in our history?
Well,
and he's bragging that he has, quote, now it's the tallest, is what he said.
And it's also, the other part about this, having known millions of narcissists in my time and having been accused of being a narcissist from time to time, I can't imagine how someone would say that. But you can think or say something to your friends or think something, but then not to think it's a problem to say it
he has no
on
filters
broadcast
on anything.
medium. To just say it to everybody is an entirely different realm. And he, I got to say, we have to acknowledge, for a very long time, he's been getting away with it and been very, very successful at it. So the more he did it, the more successful he became. And here he is now in the running again to be president of the United States. So we can criticize him all he wants, but clearly he knows what he's doing.
So I'm going to ask John King this in about an hour and whatever, but I'll ask you to begin with. This is yet another myth about Donald Trump, that he is unimaginably wealthy. He's still wealthy, but he can't do this bond. He can't find anybody.
Yeah. Wow.
He doesn't have enough collateral. And by the way, in fairness to him, what I learned last night was saying, well, obviously he owns buildings. Real estate is generally inappropriate collateral because it's hard to sell. It isn't liquid. They want stocks and cash and that kind of thing. But he doesn't have the amount of enough for collateral
Which
to
he
cover
said he
this.
did.
Which, exactly. So does this cause anybody who loved him particularly because of his business prowess?
No, and I gotta tell, and I will say that as a
You got to give up, Jim. It's not going to happen.
As an NBC employee and as someone who watched Celebrity Apprentice and actually,
You did?
know,
Of
yes,
course you
and was
did.
a fan of Donald Trump
Of
as
course you
a reality star, he has been built up to be this myth, and to his followers, it is true. And if he has 1 million, it's 1 million more than they have, right? So the fact that he has been revealed to have no clothes, the emperor has no clothes.
Can you imagine that? I wouldn't want to see that.
He's not nearly as wealthy as
Never.
he has indicated by even 5%. They don't care. They don't care.
But it's interesting, though. People from New York that have watched him for a
they've
long
known.
time, they've known.
Yeah,
they've seen the truth there.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk more about the bond issue and what the implications are with John King in the 1 o'clock hour. A lot of people don't know that you were not a media maven, but a music maven.
Yes.
Before you became a news media maven many decades ago. Private equity destroying music. And I had no idea where the story is going. It's a really interesting story.
It's amazing. So when you go to a movie, forever, if you go to a movie or a TV show and suddenly one of your favorite songs or a song that you know is used in the movie or used in the TV show, it's usually been negotiated by an A&R person, an artist and repertoire person, who has represented either the people who own the catalog of the music or the artist of the music, and they go to the producer, and the producer gives a list of songs, you clear the rights, someone gets some money, and generally there's some protectiveness around the song, because you don't want to overuse the song, right? And that's been the way it's been for decades. I can't remember a time that it wasn't that way. And just like many things, like your pet sitting, your pet boarding, your dry cleaners, your daycares, private equity has come into the music licensing business, and they are basically taking these fire sales of taking a song like Whitney Houston's hits or a Bruce Springsteen hit, and they are overusing it in movies and shows to the point where you keep hearing the same song. You're like, wow, why do I keep hearing Whitney Houston? I want to dance with someone, because someone is making pennies and pennies and pennies and pennies from it by overusing it, as opposed to protecting it and perhaps licensing it judiciously.
And the other consequence is it forces out young, new entrepreneurial artists.
Because of course
the
you
old
want Whitney
stuff is
Houston,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Definitely you want to have a Whitney Houston, or you want to have a Bruce Springsteen, so why would you want the Cranberries, for example, or one of the more alternative artists? So what difference does it make? Well, Whitney Houston, I think, because her catalog, some of it has been sold, the Houston family isn't making the money.
Yeah.
These private equity people are, and they're not making as much as they could if they would just license it from time to time. They're basically just flooding the market with it and blocking out, as Jim said, other smaller artists that could make, because you could make $10,000, $15,000, $30,000 a year from a license on your song, a song that even wasn't a hit. But now this blocks it out. And this is exactly what they're doing to all the other businesses.
You know what they talked about, too, in this story? That it's private equity that ending up shutting down places like Toys R Us, the media brand Vice.
How about the healthcare system?
Yeah.
And
Stewart.
It's Stewart Healthcare System. And you talk to your dentist or your doctor about these private equity firms coming in and buying practices and hollowing them out, too. They're not,
they're
not very good.
I was reading these stories. You know what I was thinking? I didn't want to say it on the air. We should have gone into private equity. I mean, that's really where it's at.
That's where it's at. Yeah, and I mean,
you're screwing people and making a lot of money.
Exactly.
You go into this bare bones. I mean, it's the place where Maud would go get boarded. I'm not really.
Maud is the dog.
My dog, by the way, not my child.
Her
not
daughter.
my daughter
Is Ruby. She
I'd
doesn't
love
get
to board
boarded,
Ruby,
right?
but that's not happening.
Not
but it's been taken over by a private equity.
Yeah.
And the people who used to work there.
We love Ruby.
Yeah, we do. Who got paid more and cared. It's not that these people are worse. I just know they're not getting paid the same amount, and it shows.
Yeah, is there anything to be done about this?
No. I mean, it's the same thing that Bain Capital did. It's just that and it's hard not to sell your business. right? It's hard when you've been running a small business that might have a couple of locations.
Yeah.
It's hard if you own the catalog.
Well,
to
Bain
Whitney
Capital's
Houston.
done some. I mean, Deval Patrick was there, was doing some socially
good things. But I
responsible
remember they did
investing,
come in and they, would buy things and then they would gut it out.
That's what they do. And let me just say, to be clear, if Marjorie and I understood what private equity was,
I don't understand
we'd
what
be
it
in
is.
it. So I just want to be
I guess
clear.
it's different than public equity, but I don't know what that means either. So this is good news. We've talked for years about how in a lot of medical studies, men are the people that are researched, and so that White men, exactly. So that you might know that heart disease does this with white men and cancer does this. But Biden is talking about including women in more of these research
Can we play
studies.
some sound from him? By the way, this is where he's signing an executive order. This is on Monday, yesterday? Yes, to advance women's health studies. Here he is.
Clearly, those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade to support a national ban on abortion have no clue about the power of women. I mean it sincerely. But they're finding out. If you send me a Democratic Congress that supports reproductive freedom, I promise you, we will restore Roe v. Wade again as the law of the land.
Is this symbolic? It's not. It's more than symbolic.
No, it's more than symbolic. I mean, I think it's kind of fascinating. I always think about how I am 62 years old, and every day I learn something about being about women's health that I had no idea about, that no one ever told me about, that it's not that I was raised in a family that didn't talk about things, it's just they didn't know it, I didn't know it, my doctor's always telling me something. And we also have gone through a period where, yes, women can do, as I think Joe Biden says at that signing, women can do the same job that men do, but sometimes we need different equipment and different things. And part of this study is going to look at women in military and what health issues women have when they're serving that are different from men. So I think this is a great holistic approach to both researching issues like childbirth and menopause and all sorts of things that we don't talk enough about the complications of or the actual details of, as well as looking at women doing jobs that have been traditionally done by men and what we might need and how it might impact us.
You know what was incredible? That when the Dobbs decision came down, they suddenly found out that women were going to be like that woman in Texas at 20 weeks, finding out that her baby essentially was not going to survive. It's like they didn't know anything about this. I mean, women know something about, anybody who's had a baby or has been a woman knows a little bit about the stages of pregnancy and all that kind of stuff. These guys had no clue.
No, and again, when you have elected officials making medical decisions based on things that aren't medical facts, you end up with women who are afraid to go to vacation in Florida, married women, heterosexual married women, because they're afraid they might be pregnant and might have a miscarriage in Florida or a miscarriage in another state that may criminalize them because they may not even know they're pregnant. So.
I don't think they knew that the same procedure that takes care of a miscarriage is often the same procedure that is done. A dilation and curettage, I think they call it DNC. Yeah.
So, Sue, Staten Island, there was history made the other day. I remember talking to you on our shows about days not so long ago here where there was resistance, LGBTQ people participating formally in the St. Patrick's Day parade. That
for
time
years.
passed.
Yeah.
And is Staten Island, when they finally allowed it, they sort of allowed it by creating a set. Well, you tell us the deal.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
What happened here in Boston was eventually the organizers of the parade allowed the OutVets, the LGBTQ veterans group, to march after winning in the 90s a Supreme Court ruling saying they could keep gay veterans and gay groups out. I have to, just as a quick aside, I got a great text. Colton Bradford and I, who's also openly gay, got to host the TV broadcast of the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Well, you did too.
Yeah, me and Colton were there.
Oh, that's pretty great.
And Derek Zangami was on the sideline, who's also openly gay.
Oh, that is
And,
spectacular.
we didn't talk about it. It wasn't a big deal, but it was taking a moment of how hard we fought to be included when I was an activist. And a former elected official who lived in South Boston sent me a text saying, "Hey, Sue, you guys are doing great. We've come a long way since that meeting we set up at Wacko's house way back when."
Wacko Hurley.
Wacko Hurley.
When Mayor Marty Walsh had set up a meeting with myself, Jeff Copley, my co-publisher, a certain police office member of the police department who lived in Southie, and a certain city councilor who lived in Southie, to go to Wacko's house to say, "Hey, Bay Windows is a South Boston business. How about you let Bay Windows march? We'll just carry a banner. We won't say anything gay, and that will be the way. That's the way we'll break the barrier. And someone who we love and have a fandom of said, "So what do you think? You're going to let them march?" And he said, "No." And why? He said, "Because they're gay." And we walked out, and here we are now hosting the parade. But what happens?
Wacko Hurley, you should say, was head of the whole deal.
Yes,
right?
yeah, and he carried. This is my favorite part about Wacko Hurley. He carried the Supreme Court ruling folded up in his wallet, so he could take it out and read it to you whenever he wanted. But in Staten Island, they just have become successful by setting up a separate parade, a second parade on a different day where it's open and welcoming to everyone. And of course, it's become the popular parade. These guys have been working on it, I don't know, for decades. 2 guys on Staten Island, and that's the parade that everybody wants to be at. Mine, of course, Dublin in Ireland has always let LGBT people.
They're way ahead.
Way ahead. It's
yeah,
always been.
I love
they
it. They
also
pointed
legalized
that out.
same-sex marriage in their constitution long before we did here.
So decades they've been working on this. So kudos.
Who are the people you're not mentioning by name?
I'll tell you. I don't have permission to tell the story, so I'll tell you later.
When
You
they
know
also
who they are.
Point out in this story, I mean, it's
You know who they are.
The irony of this being, St. Patrick's Day parade and having to do with Ireland and St. Patrick, that just shortly after this guy. Fay was given an award.
Brendan Fay.
Yeah, was given an award for activism by the President of Ireland, invited to be the Grand Marshal of their parade there. And months later, a 30-year-old biracial gay man became Ireland's first Prime Minister.
Right.
That was what, in 1984? No, not 1984. 2017, something like that.
Yeah, I mean it's just really it's an interesting.
No, it wasn't 2017.
It's either 1984
no,
or 2017.
Pardon me, I've really goofed this up.
Well, it happened regardless.
It happened, but it's always this funny thing when Irish Americans talk about the ideals of being Irish, and then you look at Dublin and what they're doing, and it's a lot like when you're Christian and say, well, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't do those things. Those are the things we're going to do. So it's kind of a funny thing. I also love
2016, I think.
2016. We got a lot of pushback talking. I talked to Senator Nick Collins for the At Issue podcast, who hosted the St. Patrick's Day breakfast, and we talked about migrants. We talked about how the Irish immigrants and migrants, how the first St. Patrick's Day happened in 1737, I think, before we were even a nation, because the Irish migrants wanted to set up a support group for Irish immigrants and migrants coming over, and how Nick Collins made the comparison to what's happening in Haiti right now and trying to set that up, and how this is the Irish way. And people on Twitter were freaking out, like, why are you bringing migrants up on St. Patrick's Day? I'm like, hello?
By the way, I thought that was a typo. This is like the 295th anniversary of the parade, or 200?
Well, the parade has been happening since I think the 1800s. Yeah.
No, I think before 7.
Yeah, but we have been consecutively marking we were the first place to mark St. Patrick's Day in North America since 1737, I think, and have been doing it every year since. The parade, I think, started once in Dorchester. I might be wrong on this, but yeah, this is one of the longest running celebrations.
Okay, let's get to what we really care about today.
I'm sorry to go off. From Ireland to Great Britain.
Marjorie, one of the reasons I admire Marjorie is she is as good a reporter as I've ever met.
Oh, that's not you,
She did not
I did not know.
She did not know that Kate Middleton
Is it a farm stand?
allegedly been at a farm stand.
Allegedly, that's correct.
Trenni said it's not even her.
Not her.
So what do you know, and what's your suspicion?
Look like her.
Well, first of all, this is a TMZ video, and TMZ is reporting that it's Kate Middleton and William out at a farmer's market. And I, too, would like to affirm what Trenni said. It doesn't look like Kate, and if you use artificial intelligence to clean up the blurriness, it doesn't look like her at all.
You did that?
I did. Well, somebody else did it.
Okay.
And if you are recovering from surgery and didn't want to be out, you wouldn't be, or didn't want to be public because you weren't feeling well, you wouldn't be carrying a big shopping bag and walking at the pace that she is walking at. And it also doesn't really look like William, but he's kind of, he could look like anyone. He's kind of
So what do you know about the marchiness of colonoscopy or whatever? What is her
I think
name?
it's Combray or something.
Combray.
Well, you know who I mean.
Yes.
Marchioness, the one he's supposedly having an affair with.
William.
William.
What do
Yeah.
you know about that? We ordinarily don't talk about these things, but look.
Oh, excuse me. It's the Marchioness of Chumley.
Chumley.
No, it
Yes.
is not
Yes.
of Chumley.
Of Chumley.
Well, you know,
It's Medolio. Or
That's
something
That's
like
not
that.
how you pronounce it.
Oh, wait a second. We have the actual sound. Here's the sound of how you pronounce it. Go ahead.
The Marchioness of Chumley.
Excuse
The
me?
Marchioness of Chumley.
Marchioness of Chumley.
The Marchioness of Chumley.
Okay. No, that's Secretariat. So what's with him and the Marchioness of Chumley? What is going on?
Allegedly, they've had an affair. Allegedly.
So it's like Charles and what's her face?
Yes, of course.
Kate
It's
calls
like,
her the rural rival.
The rural.
No, she does not. She acknowledges
allegedly the rural rival.
Allegedly.
Oh, we don't know.
Yes,
Okay.
and of course, because royal watchers have nothing else to do.
Exactly.
When there have been times where her children have been placed in a place on the balcony where normally William's children should be.
You mean the children of the Marchioness de
Wait
Chumley?
a second. Are you serious?
I am. There people have circled all these balcony photos of how her eldest son has been standing next to William instead of.
Now, do we know whose children are whose? I mean, there's a lot of question about Harry.
That's
who really
with
is
the
the father
stable
of Harry.
hand.
Well, he
Stable
wasn't
hand.
a stable hand. He was
No,
a
the
captain.
captain
in
of the Air Force.
With whom
just
Diana was having a romance.
We just need to be clear
Good for her.
and appreciate what clearly Queen Elizabeth was doing all this time, okay? Because as any kind of little scandal they had, it was managed and taken care of. How long has she been dead? And the whole place is
It's just falling apart.
apart.
Philip had numerous affairs.
We discussed the right to
We just
privacy
didn't know about
or
it.
lack of same of Governor Healey vis-a-vis her traveling. Does Kate, what's the private? We all believe in privacy except when it comes to Kate. Is that correct?
Well, as Tina Brown has said, Tina Brown, the great editor and media person and great British
What'd
person.
she say?
She says that we're looking at the royals incorrectly. They are actually enslaved as royals, and we keep looking at them as they get to do anything they want when they have actually been born into this terrible job that they have to keep.
So do you know what's going on? Or
No, I don't know what's going on. What I think is going on is I think that something upset her, and she said, "I'll be in my room."
Oh, you really think that's what's going on?
And she said, "You know what?
The Marchioness de
I'm in my
Chumley.
room.
Yeah.
You guys figure it
How
out."
do you say that again?
Can we
One
get the
second.
sound?
What is it?
The Marchioness of Chumley.
Yeah.
The Marchioness of Chumley. So she's in her room, and she's looking at
That's
Meghan
not how it's
Markle
spelled,
going,
by the way, but
Meghan
okay.
got out, and I'm stuck here with these jamokes.
That's
I'm
right.
gonna be in my room.
That's right. She
I'm
didn't
in
know
my
what
room.
she was getting into. I mean, who could blame her? But
What happened to Pippa, by the way, the sister?
Pippa's younger sister.
Pippa's got what is she, a dress designer or
Well,
a TV show?
Jim
or-
spent many hours lusting after
I
Pippa.
did not. That is so
Yes, you did.
untrue.
When she was at
I
the,
didn't know about
when
the
she was
family
at the
links.
wedding, and at the wedding
I was not
that
doing
we were
that. I was
up
not
at
lusting
3 o'clock
after
in the morning,
anybody.
and Pippa had a hot little outfit on at the wedding.
Pippa was looking good.
Oh,
So,
maybe
yes.
she looked fine.
Yes.
Leave it at that.
Not that you noticed.
Sue, that was a great addition
Oh, wait a minute.
to our
More
show.
Healey's calling me to
Oh,
tell me where she is. Oh, no, sorry. Where are you? Okay. Oh, she's at Hampton Beach.
Hampton Beach.
The exotic Hampton Beach.
I think she's at some swish
Okay.
locale. Maybe that's where she went to.
She's
a
at
swish.
Hampton Beach.
Well, that's not that swish. Is
Okay.
it really? I don't
Okay,
know.
let's move
Is
on.
it?
No, nice to see you, Sue O'Connell. That's what you meant to say. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Sue
Okay.
O'Connell, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sue O'Connell. We've been speaking with Sue O'Connell, co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News and confidant of the governor and the Marchioness de Chumley.
That was actually very close to accurate.
Thank you,
I think.
Peter. I've been practicing all
It's okay.
day. Sue is co-host of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue, which you can see every Sunday at 11:30 following Meet the Press. I understand she's going to be doing a deep dive, as we say, into the
Let's hope so.
Marchioness
I'm Chumley.
on Sunday.
Whatever.
Okay, after a quick break, our food authority, the Atlantic's Corby Kummer, is going to be with us. He's next. He's going to tell us about, Jose Andres, who is this great chef who goes to all these disaster areas of the world to try to get people food. He's helping Gaza and edible mushrooms, Jim. Better watch out. You don't know what you're getting there. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's about reparations.
From GBH News, I'm Soraya Wintersmith. This is What Is Owed. For this episode, we start on a tour bus as it sets off to roll through the streets of the first city in the United States to set up a reparations program. It's a small place just north of Chicago called Evanston, Illinois.
It is time we lead our city past ceremony and apology and into an overdue commitment to reparative policy.
What is owed? Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Museum of Science, where their new exhibit, Changing Landscapes, an Immersive Journey, transports you to iconic spots around the globe to see how people are adapting to a changing climate. More at mos.org. And BioNova Scientific, a biologics CDMO providing development and GMP manufacturing services to small and mid-sized biopharmaceutical companies. BioNova Scientific, where concept becomes cure. BioNovaScientific.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by food policy analyst Corby Kummer. Corby is the executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hello, Corby.
Hello, Jim. Hello, Marjorie.
Hi.
Hello, Corby Kummer. Well, millions of people around the world have been watching what's been happening in Gaza and imminent famine there. Now we learn about Jose Andres, the famed restaurant chef, who's getting involved in helping to get food and supplies over there. What's going on?
He's bringing attention to a terrible crisis. There's a piece today in the New York Times that famine is imminent in Gaza. What is really getting in the way are shipment lanes and being able to land boats from Cyprus to Gaza or get in enough truckloads. So World Central Kitchen, Jose's group, has been able to get in 10 truckloads of food, I think, a day. The need is 150 truckloads, but Israel has very strict protocols around the checkpoint, so there's nothing like enough food getting in. The U.S., as we know, has been airdropping and airlifting food in. But Jose Andres and World Central Kitchen generally find their way to crisis zones and find their way in. In this case, what I think is really most valuable, aside from the great work that he does, is bringing attention to the need to get food into Gaza.
He's unbelievable. Here he is on Meet the Press on Sunday talking about the mess in Gaza.
Israel has in their power, at the very least, if they don't stop the military advance, to make sure that nobody is hungry and that nobody is without food and water. This is something that should be happening overnight, but for political reasons, I guess, it's not happening there.
You know, Corby mentioned that famine is imminent. According to the UN, we mentioned this yesterday, northern part of Gaza, they're predicting famine conditions by May, southern Gaza by July. And we looked up this morning what the technical definition, and it's even too horrible to mention, but on the NPR report this morning, Corby, they said there is potential for 100% of the population, which the UN says they've never heard about before, 100% of the population living in famine, well, not living in famine conditions. It's just unimaginable.
What I think is valuable about that horrible prediction is reminding ourselves what famine really means. We all think of it, I think we grew up thinking it's when there's a dust bowl, it's when there's climate change and you can't harvest food. Famine is always politically caused. It is a lack of distribution of food. It is not so much that there is not enough being harvested, is that a political situation is preventing food from reaching the people who need it. That's why the UN is calling for this. That's why they're calling it a famine. It's because political conditions have choked off the supply of food.
By the way, let me just say, well, sorry, you go ahead.
What is the definition?
Well, it's dry. So, it says the technical definition of the UN, 20%, at least 20% of the population in the particular area facing extreme levels of hunger. 30% of the children in the same place are wasted. I don't even want to read it, or too thin for their height, and it goes on and on. There's specific criteria. But
so like the child, we saw the picture of the
10-year-old who
child
died, that photograph.
Who died, who had other health issues, but he had starved.
You know what really, by the way, Jose Andres is a buddy of Corby's, we should say. They've worked together on some important things. This guy has done more to help people around the world in a private, non-profit World Central Kitchen than most governments in the world have. And what's most disturbing to me is that he's doing, admittedly not nearly enough, but doing more than any government is currently doing to help these starving people. What? I'm sorry, what?
He contracts with government, so he's often distributing much more efficiently. Food's been paid for sometimes by the U.S. government, as in after Hurricane Maria. And I think now it's UN or even U.S. funded food, but he's able to cut through red tape and literally get into areas that governments are not faster than they did great work in Ukraine. But getting back to famine, nothing in that definition had anything to do with drought conditions.
You're so right.
Or harvest.
We're talking to Corby Kummer.
So, Corby, lots of people are trying to eat less meat for health reasons and some for environmental reasons, as Mother Jones points out in this piece about lab-grown meat, that agriculture accounts for about 11% of the country's greenhouse gas emissions, with livestock, such as cattle, making up a quarter of those emissions. So, but, you know, the cattle business makes a lot of money for a lot of people, a lot of ranchers, so they're fighting against lab-grown meat's success?
I'm chortling because this is the dumbest campaign ever. It is only for politicians to be able to say, technology is declaring war on ranches in Arizona, in Alabama. We don't believe in this technology stuff. What the fact is, there is no lab-grown meat that's commonly available. You can't go to the supermarket and get cell-cultured, cultivated, or lab-grown meat. They're all synonyms for the same thing, where you take a couple of cell lines from one dead animal that you did sacrifice and harvest, then provided various growth media, you massively grow it out, and then with luck you can put it into something like an enchilada, and people will not know that it was cell cultured or made in a lab from a couple of dead animal cells. It's nowhere near market conditions. And so this is just, I think, a publicity stunt for lawmakers in Alabama to say we're going to ban lab-grown meat. I think the more current argument is not allowing plant-based meat, like Beyond and Impossible, to be called meat or to be called meat in school lunches. Which is concurrent. There's, I think, 16 states that are targeting cell-cultured meat and addressing the use of the word meat in such products packaging. I think it's a losing battle, just as it was with almond milk and soy milk and oat milk.
You know, before we leave that, I don't want you to get angry at me. I think I understood what you were saying about plant-based, quote, meat, the campaign to not allow it to be called meat. I actually think I'm with those people. Should I be embarrassed?
You should always be embarrassed. It's a good practice every day. Yeah.
No, I'm serious. It isn't meat. I'm not saying it's not a suitable alternative for those who choose it, but it is somewhat misleading, isn't it? Or am I missing something?
No, it's absolutely misleading, and it's trying to make you think that it is a good, tasty, really satisfying substitute for a hamburger, which has released a lot of greenhouse gases and caused untold suffering of animals. So I'm for it. But I also think it's such an ancient argument that you'd have to go back to milk or peanut butter or any of the other uses of these terminologies.
By the way, guys, Zoe writes this in a IVF isn't allowed in Alabama because embryos have the full rights of humans, but lab-grown meat also isn't allowed there because it isn't a meat.
Okay.
By the way, we should
have to quote the great Tom Lehrer, the humorist, who is still alive and kicking and hilarious in Cambridge, Mass., who said about counting embryos as people, does that mean if I'm carrying some embryos, I can get into the HOV lane?
That's pretty
good. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Clever as always.
So, Corby Kummer, I didn't know that people go around eating mushrooms, picking their own mushrooms and finding them in any significant numbers, or that they used apps to do it. But I guess...
Wait, you don't know people are foraging, or whatever the word is, for mushrooms?
Well, I didn't know.
It's like huge.
I didn't know.
It's huge.
I didn't know.
And we had Mr. Mushroom on the show, the guy from Somerville. Nicole, can you tell us what his name is so I don't call him Mr. Mushroom? There's the guy that owns the store over there who is beloved, is apparently Mr. Mushroom or whatever it is.
But apparently you got to be really careful with these apps because that identify these mushrooms, they can be wrong in many cases.
Well, I was fascinated to see this, as I've been in Telluride, Colorado, which is an annual mushroom festival, and I went foraging, and I think that Mr. Mushroom in Somerville, whose name Jim is about to get from
Tyler
Zoe.
Akabane. My apologies. He was on our show. I'm sorry. He has a store in Somerville, too. Go ahead.
Thank you.
And I think that you can find guides who will help you forage for mushrooms and show you what they look like. I would never eat a mushroom without a guide, having been burned by this in Vermont myself. But
whoa! What happened to you?
Oh, Giardia, beaver fever, as it's called there.
What is that? I don't know what it is. What is it? What is it?
A parasitic, I think, protozoa that causes very, very unpleasant symptoms and is common in water and in anything that's come into contact with animal feces, like water when you swim in a stream.
Oh.
Okay.
Or if you have mushrooms near a stream or around beavers. So that's like, that you get over it. You know, it's treatable. Other things eat out your kidneys and are much longer damaging or cause nerve damage. So you really don't want to have the wrong kind of mushroom. And I would really only trust a live human being who's been around, like Mr. Mushroom, and leads more stories. But, you know, for decades, for hundreds of years, folk knowledge, like all over Italy, right around now, when Easter time comes in both France and Italy, one of the great pastimes in the spring and the fall are foraging for mushrooms and going on walks. And you have certain stands where you think mushrooms are going to spring up after rain. You know they're edible, they're porcini or cep, and you go and you harvest them. But that's because you have been taught by previous generations that this is an edible mushroom, not by an AI tool that tells you with absolute certainty that the photo you've uploaded to that app you paid money to subscribe to is safe to eat. And it's just AI, and it wasn't given enough information on which to base a reliable judgment, and so you wind up in the emergency room.
By the way,
what do you think of when you think of Mr. Mushroom?
What do I think of?
Stormy Daniels?
That is really horrible. That may be a fireable offense.
Yeah.
By the way, in light of
do
the
you know
fact...
what I'm talking about, Corby?
We do. That's enough. Really, we all know what you're talking about. Thank you. Now, let me just say, since we shouldn't be calling him Mr. Mushroom, as I said, it's Tyler Akabane, I believe. We should also, as a favor, he's kind enough to come on our show. It's called The Mushroom Shop on Medford Street in Somerville. Now, by the way, I am not anti-AI. I'm AI with caution, I should say. As long as there's a human component to check, you should share with Corby your excellent story from yesterday.
My story, yeah. You know what? I forgot the name of the plant, but Picture This is a great app. So you can walk around your neighborhood. If you see flowers that you like, you take a picture of it, and it tells you what the flowers are, and then if you like me, go out and buy them. So I've had a plant for a while indoors that it was in a corner, not getting very much light. And so I thought it was okay, but I took a picture of it with Picture This, and the app informed me that the name of the plant, which I'm sorry I forget, but telling me that it looked like it was sick and not getting enough light. And I thought, wow, this is great. And it gave you possible symptoms, and then you clicked on that, and it told you all the symptoms, and mine, since it was in a corner, and you know, in 2 days, it's like a miracle. In 2 days since I moved the plant, it's perking up and it's changing color.
As long as it didn't say put it in your salad.
That's right. It didn't say put it in my salad. So the eating thing is a different thing.
Well, wait, you finish the story. What did it say at the bottom? You told me the story about the app. What else did it say?
It told me it was...
And what else did it say?
It said it was sickly.
No, it said call Mr. Mushroom as soon as possible. And she did, and Mr. Mushroom was able to help solve the problem.
To check it with Stormy Daniels.
He said eat it.
Thought.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
By the way, that is really coming close to the line with the mushroom thing and Stormy Daniels for whatever.
What are you talking about? We've mentioned this about 10 times.
I know, but that was a long time ago. We're not mentioning it anymore. By the way, the Stormy Daniels documentary on Peacock, I believe, premiered last night. And there were excerpts of it on CNN. And she talks about, and this is serious, she talks about fear for her life.
Yep.
When one of the reasons she signed that deal and took the money from Michael Cohen on behalf of Trump was because she thought if she had something in writing, it would make it less likely that Trump would have her killed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, every day is just, we're talking to Corby Kummer. Corby, big debate on Beacon Hill about whether drinks to go from restaurants, which was made permissible, legal during COVID for obvious reasons, should be made permanent. The people who own package, I don't know what liquor stores are called, package stores, liquor stores, whatever, are unalterably opposed. What's the right answer?
Oh, the right answer is they should not be opposed, and that carry-out cocktails are not going to eat into liquor store sales. And that anything that can help restaurateurs come back from the pandemic facing rising food prices, rising labor prices, and less labor to pick from, anything that can help them make more money and keep afloat is a good thing. And that it's just a silly fight, especially with the, I think, winning argument that per ounce alcohol from carryout from restaurants is so much more expensive.
Exactly. That's exactly.
You will get it in a liquor store that it's just not going to eat into liquor store sales.
Yeah, especially when you can get a lot of these mixed things like the margarita mix or this mix or that mix if you're not, if you're not confident about making your own fancy cocktails.
Well, also beyond I think of the story in the Globe that we read, I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, 24 states have legalized this permanently already. And like so many things, we're slower and you're right, independent restaurants in particular continue to need help. And this is a way, at least on the margins, they can be helped. So I'm with you. I would urge, I believe the Senate has passed this and it's sitting in the House. So you should call your state rep and let him or her know what your position is on this cocktails to, ever bought cocktails to go from a restaurant?
Yes.
It's fun.
It's
really
fun.
great.
Yeah, it is fun. It's absolutely fun. But
the fact that I like best in this is that the to-go option has been used most frequently by Chinese restaurants and Mexican to sell Mai Tais and margaritas.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think a lot of people get intimidated by making cocktails by themselves, those kind of mixed drinks. So, Corby, I am the joke is all the Irish are reading the obits all the time. Well, I'm Irish and I do read the obits a lot of the time, but I think it's fascinating to read people's lives. And there's an obit in the New York Times about someone with whom you had a correspondence and a friendship, William Whitworth, who was
He was my mentor. I worked for him for 20 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Great. At the Atlantic. In fact, right across the street from the VPL at 745 Boylston
That's
Street.
right.
Which is where the Atlantic used to be, right?
On the top floor. And then we moved to 77 North Washington in the North End. And we started at 8 Arlington, right at Marlborough and Arlington facing the Public Garden. So this man was slated to be the next editor of the New Yorker and offered the job, which he didn't want to take because his boss, whom he loved and was not ready to retire, Mr. Sean, and he stayed really beyond the time he probably should have stayed. So Bill Whitworth accepted the Boston Properties co-founder and developer Mortimer Zuckerman's offer to edit The Atlantic. And an editor named Bob Gottlieb, who ironically later became editor of The New Yorker, told me if your life dream is to be an editor at The New Yorker, as it was, you will go make a man nobody knows named William Whitworth give you a job in Boston. That's what I did. And he was such a fantastic, wise, generous, low-key, completely apolitical, completely loving, generous, impartial, instructive boss.
Wow.
But I stayed there as long as he did and long beyond, because he created a workplace all of us, lucky enough to work for him, knew we would never have such a fortunate work environment, or what we call the Atlantic family. As it happens, we'll all be together this weekend. We're in constant email contact, the Atlantic family, that worked together under Bill. He never had a meeting once. He wrote Lilliputian, unbelievably voluminous notes in the margins of printed article galleys before they went to press that were a masterclass, each one, in editing that I try to pass on to my students. In fact, every day I try to live up to a different aspect of Bill Whitworth.
That's pretty great.
You know, you said he never had meetings. So how did he communicate otherwise besides rights in the gown?
He left his door open.
He left his door open.
He was much more eloquent, intimate, patient, humorous in his notes on galleys than he was in person, where he was incredibly measured and kind of taciturn, but wonderful, but unbelievably funny and generous. Terry Gross had an interview with him last Friday as a tribute.
Oh, she did? Oh, I'm going to back and listen to it.
Her husband is many people's idea of the best jazz writer of the second half of the 20th century, Francis Davis. And he wrote for Bill. I got to edit him when he was at the Atlantic. Beautiful writing on jazz, music, popular culture, movies. And Bill Whitworth had interviewed Pauline Kael, the film critic, and Terry was doing something on film criticism, and Pauline Kael interviewed him. And you get a sense of his fantastic Arkansas, mellifluous, low-key accent. But everything he said was smart and sharp and unmalicious and wonderfully funny, acute, supportive. We'll just never see or work for anyone like him.
That's a hell of a tribute, Corby. That was beautiful.
That is a hell of a tribute, Corby Kummer. That was lovely.
You know, by the way, if you hadn't ended so beautifully, I was going to ask you the obvious about whether it was really Kate Middleton at the farm stand, but I think it's inappropriate after that beautiful tribute to your mentor, so I won't. Corby, it's great to see you.
Corby, thank you. And thank you for bringing us the tribute to William Whitworth. There's a beautiful, as I said, obituary for him written by Sam Roberts in the New York Times. Thanks, Corby. We've been speaking with Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at the aforementioned Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. Up next, we're going to talk with Meredith Goldstein of Love Letters fame. She got an exclusive interview with Governor Moore Healey and her partner on their romantic playlist and some details about their relationship as well. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
March Madness is here. The NCAA basketball tournaments are about to begin. That's tournaments, plural. This season, as Iowa's Caitlin Clark became a household name, viewership has exploded across the women's game.
My freshman year, it was like we had nobody at our games, and now I play in front of like thousands of people.
I'm Elsa Chang. Get to know the queens of college basketball on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz. You can welcome spring with New England seafood dishes, including double clam chowder, crab cakes, lobster, and fish delivered to your doorstep. Online ordering at rogersfishco.com.
I'm Zoe Matthews, senior producer for Boston Public Radio, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by Boston Globe Advice columnist Meredith Goldstein. She hosts the Love Letters podcast, and as a result, she may not know whether it is really Kate Middleton at the farm stand, but based upon the podcast that dropped, I think, today, she may know where Maura Healey was those 4 days. Meredith Goldstein, it's great to see you.
I don't even know if it is a farm stand. That's
Whoa! Wow. It's a green screen. And
right, I don't even know anymore. I don't know anymore.
It's good to see you, Meredith.
Okay, Meredith Goldstein, I was about to make the same mistake again, but I didn't. Yeah. Meredith Goldstein. So first of all, I want to know how you got the governor and her partner to do this interview and this podcast with you because lots of people, Sue O'Connor, just complaining that you've been trying for months.
Well, by the way, we haven't formally ever asked. We've asked Maura Healey when she's standing here. We've said we'd love to have you and Joanna Lydgate on, and we haven't done it, and you did.
Well, I mean, it's difficult, right? Because when I'm calling someone and saying, will you sit down with me? They know I'm not probably going to ask them about the budget. They know I'm probably not. I mean, maybe, right? They know I'm not going to ask them about certain things that other reporters might ask them, right? But I didn't know if they'd say yes. And really, when I asked for the governor. And I told them that the theme of this podcast season was who helps people in relationships.
Right.
And I think that was interesting to them, right? Of well, who does help us? And then what I got was a who. It wasn't a who. It was a what. And it was music. And I was not shocked because, Maura Healey is someone who says, I want Brandi Carlile at my inauguration, and I want it to be a concert. And music seems to be a huge part of her life.
Huge part of her life.
Well, I want to be clear. When you did the original inviting, it was only the governor and the partner was an add-on?
Yes, the response I got was
good
sure.
For them.
They'll talk to you, and they'll talk to you about the thing that helps them, which is being able to lose themselves in music and find themselves in music. And so, I keep saying it was March 1st so that I went to their home, and I think that's important only because I know I saw a lot of commenters on the Globe today being like, well, is this a response to news events of the week? And this was, of course, before news events of the week. But if when we just sat down and talked about their playlist and what they listen to,
which, by the way, I've just discovered is still there on the homepage of the Globe because I had the hard copy. But we got all 13 songs if you want to know.
And this is their curated playlist. And of course, we wound up talking about so many artists and musicians that aren't even in that playlist, but they're music fans.
Okay, so let's hear a little sound here. Here, it's dropped today. Is that right?
Yes.
Healey and Lydgate talking about their relationship anthem. It's called You and Me on the Rock by Brandi Carlile. First you'll hear Lydgate, then the governor.
I think this song is one that we come back to actually again and again, all kinds of different moments, whether it's just a feel-good song to play in the kitchen while you're making dinner or a song to play in the car when you're driving. And what were you going to say?
I was going to say, too, when we may have a fight about something or we may be going through a tough time, and it's the kind of song you put on and it helps you reset and remember what it's about.
That's great. That's really great.
I love the picture of them in their matching, look like Ugg slippers.
They were wearing matching slippers, and it's always great.
Marge and I wear matching slippers to the show most days, too.
I have always assumed that. And
that's where she probably got it.
I think there's something...
Sorry, Meredith, go ahead. Sad.
There is something special to me. Often when I interview couples for the podcast, I interview one person at a time because it's better for sound, right? They're not talking over each other. But it is wonderful to interview a couple together because at least once during this interview, they looked at each other and said, oh, I didn't know that about you. Because you say things, and when you're asked by a third party all these questions, you wind up saying things you maybe haven't shared.
Okay, so something I wasn't aware of, and we think we know a decent amount about the governor. We learned a lot from this 32 minutes, or whatever it was. I want to play a song for you, and you tell me what the significance. Kool and the Gang.
Kool and the Gang.
And why are we talking about this?
We are talking about this because one of the questions I asked them is, what was your first live concert?
This is incredible.
And this is what the governor had to say. And what's interesting is the governor saw Kool and the Gang on Boston Common, and I found out that a lot of my friends did too of that era, right? On Boston Common, they were all there, right? And then I looked up, Globe archival photos of that concert because, of course, long before I lived in Boston. So, I was really excited for her that was her first show, and for Joanna it was the Rolling Stones, which is not too shabby. And mine was Sinead O'Connor, so I feel pretty lucky too.
Where'd you see Sinead O'Connor?
In Maryland, my older sister took me, and I was like, well, this is setting the course for my life now. So I think having that first great live music experience can really change your life.
Very briefly, and then we'll get back to her. I'm a huge Sinead O'Connor fan. Jeff Edgers, your former colleague, is now at the Washington Post. We had him on the show. He wrote a beautiful story after she died about his relationship with her in the Washington Post. It was just beautiful, and you should check it out. Jeff Edgers, Edgers.
Yes,
Washington
please
Post.
do.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Here's what I learned about the governor, that she really likes to fold the laundry.
So there were a lot of relatable things. When you talk to a couple, you're like, is this like me? There were a few relatable things. One is the laundry, because while I am bad at doing laundry, folding laundry, I find it quite soothing. So does she. The other thing is that she talked about live music in particular, and you go into a venue and the lights are off and you are anonymously there, and your whole job is to be emotionally present to pay attention. And her relationship to live music is like what I have with the movies too, right? You just go there, and for 2 hours or 3 hours if you're seeing a Marvel movie, 4 hours if you're seeing a Scorsese movie, you are there. And I related to that too.
By the way, let me just say, for those of you, and I feel we're in this category, she's been in our lives for, 10 years, the year running for Attorney General, 8 years as Attorney General, and 1 year as Governor. We know her professionally only pretty well. You learn so much wildly interesting, not huge stuff, but you learn so much about the person. And plus, I've never heard anything from her partner before, who's a really respected leader in this community too, independent of her relationship with the governor.
And just sitting, who has time to sit around and talk about music, right? So you wind up talking about stress, and you wind up,
Well, also, you're the love letters columnist. Do most couples have a curated playlist?
I think they curated this for this episode. I think they sat together, and the sense I got was that they have many playlists. When I said
the workout playlist,
they work out
together, Jim.
Right. Right. They have a lot of different kinds of music. But when I said to them, well, what's the music that really speaks to you and your partnership? These were the songs I received.
Read the
from
top
them.
3 or 4, and then people can go check them out directly.
You and Me on the Rock, Brandy Carlisle. Starting Over, Chris Stapleton, which, as you pointed out, could be like the end of something, going into something new, or starting something all new, and I guess they're starting. Happy Children by Lori McKenna. She is a great songwriter from the South Shore, right? I have a million.
There are a few local artists on the list, and Lori McKenna I always think about because I think she co-wrote one of the songs in A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga, and I was like, look, she's local. And
she sang Girl Crush on my television show, and I almost passed out.
She's wonderful. She's a great, about
and Tiny Habits. We had on the show, too.
Tiny Habits. I only knew a little, and I have to say that the governor kind of schooled me in having a cooler playlist than I had going on.
Do you know them, by the way?
Yeah, well, now I know them quite well because everything that she gave me, I was giving up, but I'd only heard of them. So
Aren't they part of Roger Brown's Salt Lick, whatever it is? They were on our show.
Yes.
And they're part of Roger's.
They're
great. They're great.
It was fun to write this episode and record it with the playlist on in the background. Because
that's fabulous.
And a similar, listen, she is in her 50s, like Indigo Girls, Tracy Chapman. These are
two of my favorites.
Right, these are artists I grew up with and meant a lot to me too. So listen, it wasn't shocking that I liked her list.
Well, 1, congratulations on getting them, and 2, it's wonderful podcast. 30 minutes is spectacular.
If you want to know a different side of that, there's a lot of news, right? And about the governor, and this is sort of a different kind of look at what holding public office can do in your life.
It's a very different kind of look. I also love the podcast you have with Dan Shaughnessy. People may know that Dan Shaughnessy is recovering now he had bypass.
So this is where what I did not know up until recently was that it was the day after. So we recorded, and then I went to California, and while I was in California, someone was like, Dan needed this surgery. And so, for those who don't know, he had a heart surgery, and it was the day after we recorded.
Jesus.
And
was he eating a meatball sandwich like Brian McGrory wrote while he was...
No, but we did actually. We talked a lot about music that didn't make it into that episode. I asked Dan Shaughnessy to be on the Love Letters podcast because I thought it would be funny. And he's always talking about music and love and other stuff, so why not? And we recorded this episode.
He's talking about love? Dan Shaughnessy?
Dan Shaughnessy answers questions that were sent to me on the podcast, right? Okay. So we were talking about the documentary The Greatest Night in Pop on Netflix, which is about the recording of We Are the World.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And we were talking about how much we loved it and what we learned, and and now he's recovering, and we sent him love letters, sent him romance novels about sports for his recovery.
Oh, I love that.
We sent him a hockey romance. We sent him a romance about a proposal at a baseball stadium.
Which he disapproves of
I disapprove of it too. So.
Yeah, tell us why.
Well, because I don't like surprise. Yes, I think marriage proposals, and I think The Atlantic just wrote something about this, are kind of weird nowadays, but the idea that you would surprise someone and do it in front of so many people. If the person has said, I want to be proposed to, and boy, do I love baseball, hint, hint. Okay, that's fine. But not like...
Has anyone ever said no, that as far as you know?
As far as I do know, yes.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, how humiliating.
It puts this is the same thing, this debate about when someone, and Trenni would have something to say about this, running a marathon and then having some guys step in and be like, now I'm making it about me. Here's your proposal. Now everybody film it as I do a romantic thing. It's like, let a moment be a moment.
That's
pretty
great. Yeah.
Or you have to say yes because you don't want to humiliate the person in front of thousands of people. Then 5 minutes later you say, I only said it not to embarrass you.
It's a lot.
Yeah. No, he was very tough on that. He also has some very interesting theories about fandom too, which I thought were neat. But he's better. He's getting there. He did eat a meatball sandwich. He ordered the meatball sandwich.
According to Brian McGrory, from his kid, right?
Yes.
One of his kids.
When he knew he was going to be having the bypass surgery the next day.
Why not?
Sent the kid, get me a meatball sandwich, get me my computer so I can write my column before I have the surgery. So good for Dan.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to move on a dating app because we've got to get to this she's engaged column of yours, which is one of the more incredible ones ever, in my opinion. So what do you want to ask her about dating apps, Meredith Goldstein?
Well, the story that I read actually is from the New York Times about how people feel that dating apps are getting worse.
It's funny. I hear this. People will be like, oh, this is the worst time for dating apps. And I'm like, you know what else was the worst time 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 9? If you're on it and you're not finding what you like, it is the worst. Now, there's a lot more going on about, like, fake profiles. People are using AI a little bit. Jesus. But I think there was always this. I mean, they are complicated. They are difficult. It's like going to a massive party where you don't know most of the people and you don't want to. I don't know, but you could also find more of them, more niche apps. There are apps for people who want to talk about their pets. So I think as the world gets bigger, they get better and worse.
And there are niche apps where people want to do it with their pets, actually. That's a whole other...
Oh, Jim.
We've had that discussion on the show. We have. I'm sorry.
I hate to sound like an old fogey, but I was one of my younger associates. I was looking at one of these apps with her, and I was stunned about the men that pose with no shirts.
A lot of no shirts and a lot of a selfie in the car.
What's that about?
Well, I don't know. Like, I'm always like, find a friend to take your picture.
Is that because... Oh, okay. I thought you meant a selfie of you and the car.
No. There's like whenever I'm on a friend's app, there'll be like a guy and he's in the front seat of his car, and I'm like, really? That seems like a real afterthought. It's like I just got back from my communion. I guess I'll take this photo and put it on the app. And
so what's with the new shorts? Like shorts rather, showing everybody what great.
Obviously, like Robert Kennedy, the junior.
That's a little much, isn't it?
Well, listen, if you're looking for that, you're. Whatever you're putting out there, you're telling someone what you want them to see and what you want them to prioritize. So I actually think it's great if you want to pose without a shirt and that's how you feel good about yourself. You will attract the people who think that's amazing.
Excellent.
And I love it.
Okay, so what's the expression? You have the patience of what? What is that? Patience? What's
Patient of Job.
Patient of Job. Now, here, I'm going to read an excerpt from one of these things. This is only a couple days ago. I have a huge crush on this woman. She's absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, and I mean stunning. I thought she might like me back. Had a lot of faith she did. However, after hanging out with her a couple times, I was with her, and then she mentioned her in-laws and that she was engaged. Well, it gets better. Should I try to date her friends if I know I also have feelings for her? Where did that come from? So what is your advice for the guy who's after an engaged woman and then wants to know if he can't have her, how about one of her friends?
Well, it sounds like he's been brought into a group of friends, right? And now he realizes that the object of his affection is engaged, but there are other people to date. I mean, my advice was, if this is always going to feel like second best, just find a new group. These should be friends, unless you can truly say, I would like to date this person more than the original person.
So wait, so he actually knew it's not quite as bad as I thought.
No, like
he knew the friends?
He met them through
So he doesn't really know the friends.
He's getting to know them and now saying, oh, well, I'm introduced to a bunch of single women, I guess. Like, they're not the person I came here for, but should I consider? And should I... will I be ruling out, just in case she gets single, will I be ruling out my chances?
So if it turns out, how about her friends? How about somebody at Boston Public Radio? If it turns out she doesn't...
There's a cliche.
What is it?
The cliche is the wrong word, because I don't even know if it's true.
What
but
is
there's this idea I always heard that good-looking women hang around with other good-looking women, good-looking men hang around with other good-looking men. Is that true?
I don't know about good-looking. I mean, this is a subjective thing, but I do feel like people... probably attract in their lives friends like who are similar to them in terms of what they like, right?
Yeah.
Like, I will say I am someone who's probably not going to wear high heel shoes, and I can say that most of my friends don't either. Whether it's not a commentary on attractiveness, it's just like, listen, I'm showing up here with my leggings and my comfortable sneakers and
why do any of these women wear these 4-inch heels? I don't know how
that's a whole other topic.
But really, how can
I wish I had the,
Do shirtless guys hang out with other shirtless guys?
I think that, yes.
They do.
I have seen the movie Top Gun, and they all play volleyball together. That's what I learned as a child.
Probably go out with women who wear 4-inch heels.
Maybe, right.
Yeah.
So I just think we find people who make us feel like we're part of a community, and listen, happens with journalists too. I think we.
Yeah, but you're right. I don't have a single friend who I've ever seen in high heel shoes.
Okay, can we go to a more common thing than dating somebody who's engaged? There's another really interesting one about this woman who's dating a guy who's got a kid, right?
Oh, I love this letter.
Well, you explain it then.
So I really like this letter because this is relatable and real, like stuff that everybody deals with all the time. A person dating someone with a kid, and she's saying, I don't like the way he's raising his kid. Not overall, but like no bedtime. Sleeping in the same bed because everybody's too lazy to enforce bedtime rules, no brushing teeth before bed. And she's saying, okay, well, I'm a few months in. Is this something I want to sign up for, knowing that I'm going to constantly object to the choices this person makes about their child? And this is really hard to advise about because it's none of this person's business about the parenting, but it's also their own business about what they want to be around. So it's like, if it's this early, and you can ask questions. It's none of your. It's not under your control. You can't say you should. Well, I was basically like, ask questions, right? Like, find out more, because it is not up to you to decide what the rules should be. You are not a parent in this situation, but you do want to find out information for yourself.
Well, here's a question I had: if the 4-year-old is sleeping in the same bed with dad.
Where does the woman fit?
Exactly. Where does she sleep?
I don't think. My assumption is she's not sleeping over those nights.
Oh, okay.
So that is not. Good. But she's not jumping in there.
I was a little concerned about that.
No. I think
3 of them.
I think this is, and I have so many friends. Right. It's easy as a non-parent to say, well, that's weird. But I have friends. I remember them like saying, this kid is not going to sleep. This kid crawls into bed with me every night, and as long as we're sleeping, right? What we put out to the world versus, I know it's not easy.
This is a little bit off topic, but the Globe did a great series about infants sleeping with their mothers and how people can get arrested for this. And I think if you ask 10 women who are so exhausted with their little babies, that they would bring them into bed with them because they are exhausted. That's the only way the kid would go to sleep. Oh, and I don't believe you can roll.
Wait a second. Let's ask these people. How many of you who are parents ever had your low-age kid, how old was the kid? 4 in this thing?
4.
Ever sleep in your bed with you?
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I know
actually not huge. That's maybe 30%. I'm surprised it's not more.
And even for part of the night, this idea that falling asleep and then maybe being moved to a bed. Like, I know I've seen this. I have young cousins. I just remember thinking my aunt and uncle just want them to sleep.
Exactly.
So let me ask you a variation on this. So you're assuming that the woman is not sleeping in the same bed with the 4-year-old and the father. What if the kid wasn't there, but the woman the father is engaged to was sleeping in the bed? Should she join in? Or
I think you just broke my brain.
I don't know either, actually.
Yeah. No, I think that a lot of people do sleep with their.
Can we go back to the beginning?
What?
How relaxed were John Lidgate and Maura Healey when you were talking to them?
I mean, I think the first 7 minutes we were all not relaxed because it's weird and we don't know each other, right? And then you're just like, oh, now we're just like hanging out.
Was it? It became that? That's great.
I mean, I don't have much interact. I think I maybe met her once or twice, or seen her once or twice in person at events.
Oh, really?
I remember being somewhere. I couldn't remember where it was, but she would not have remembered me. It was more.
But no performative crap. They relaxed and they were.
No, and I think in your own home, you're like.
That's great.
There was nothing.
It's. Did you tell them you were going to focus in on the playlist at the beginning?
I didn't even ask for a playlist. I knew we were going to talk about music, but. They're lawyers who are prepared for everything. Of course they show up and they're like, here are the notes we made. Here are the, they were ready with the playlist. And they really wanted to highlight, it wasn't just local artists, but for the local artists who were on there, they wanted to highlight that work.
That's fabulous.
And, I asked them, have you gone to Boston Calling? Have you gone to these shows? They went to Brandy Clark over the weekend, this past weekend. I mean, they like what they like. So, they were ready. But it did feel pretty real. I mean, I'm a kind of relaxed gal.
I know, but it's still, I mean, there's this, I don't mean this in a critical way. There's a lot of high-ranking public officials create a distance. Even if they're not intending to, there is that. But it sounded from listening to it
I feel
that it
like,
was a real conversation.
I'm going to compliment all three of us and say that it is very difficult to keep distance when you're with us. You just have to roll with it. You just have to join the party.
Well, it's really great, and it's a great addition to what we know about Healey, and obviously someone she really loves.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
And a lot of great tips on music that you can enjoy.
You know what you didn't ask her, by the way, which I was nervous about asking her about 3 months ago, and I decided to do it anyway. I asked her what the ring on her left ring finger was.
It looked like a wedding ring.
And she said to me, "Are you asking if it's a wedding ring?" It is not.
Okay.
Did you notice?
No, but I have never noticed a ring in my life.
Really?
When I was younger, people would be like, "Oh, well, he's married." Oh, well, I have never noticed jewelry in my life.
Okay.
So I would not be that person.
She said it wasn't a wedding ring, so we'll take her to word.
Yeah, she said it was not a wedding ring. Well, if she's out of the previous marriage,
that was not a marriage. I don't think they were married.
No, not the judge.
Lydgate. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask.
In any case, it's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's great to see you.
Thanks to them for letting me come over.
She didn't call you the other thing once. This whole first time
I know,
ever.
and last time she didn't either. And then I feel empty inside, like we're missing something.
Okay.
Want to explain what we're talking about for the uninitiated?
I always call Meredith Goldstein Meredith Vieira.
And when you don't, I get a little bit sad. I miss it a little bit.
Let me improve my game for today. We've been speaking with Boston Globe Advice columnist Meredith Vieira.
Right, there you go.
It's Meredith Goldstein, who hosts the Love Letters podcast, which I really enjoy. I love both. I love the one with Jan Shaughnessy too.
Oh, the Shaughnessy one's great. Highly recommend.
He's great. And also we write the Love Letters column for the Boston Globe. Thank you very much, Meredith Vieira.
Thank you.
And if you want to get the governor's relationship playlist, that's what we can call it,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
It is at the Globe. You look it up, the story, and all 13 songs are right there. Thank you very much, Meredith Goldstein.
By the way, the next podcast, which she didn't want us to mention, but I feel we have to, Kate Middleton. It's really, that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
I hope you ask her some tough questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you are into Kate Middleton, we'll be devoting the last 20 minutes of the show
believe we will.
to where in the world is Kate Middleton. But up next, we're going to talk with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, Dorchester guy. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Our March membership drive starts tomorrow. To help kick it off, a generous group of GBH members will donate $25,000 to the station if we can receive 500 contributions by 7 p.m. tomorrow. You can give us a head start by giving now. All gifts are welcome. And with a sustaining gift of $10 a month, we'll thank you with our brand new GBH picnic blanket. If you can, please help earn the challenge by giving online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Revision Energy. Sunbug Solar is now part of Revision Energy, a solar installer committed to being a renewable energy partner for New England and working to fight climate change. Learn more at sunbugsolar.com. And Johnson & Wales University. From computer science to psychology and multiple MBA programs, JWU offers an immersive learning approach online. You can discover more at jwu.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, as we will be tomorrow and Friday, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. John, of course, hosts All Over the Map and the Battleground reporting projects tracking the 2024 campaign through the eyes and experience of real voters who will pick the next president. John, it's good to see you. John.
It's good to see you, too. I hope the signal holds up. I'm out on the road for my All Over the Map, and I'm on my way to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Whoa.
You guys can't hear me.
Oh, my goodness. I'm dying to hear.
Oh, you can't hear me? Okay, good.
Yes, I'm dying to hear how things go down there. You know, I always think, you know, when you're out on the road and you're interviewing real people, and many of whom are Trump supporters, they probably don't care that President Trump, or former President Trump, has been unable to come up with one of the bond companies to pay his, or hold, or whatever the verb is, his $464 million bond for his New York civil fraud trial. They don't really care, but this is a bad moment for someone who's very worried about betraying his wealth, I guess.
I think it's an interesting question as to where are we a week and a month and 2 or 3 months from now on this question. You're right. A good slice, probably the biggest slice of Trump supporters, don't believe any of this. They think it's the rigged system. They believe everyone's out to get Donald Trump, and they don't trust the judges. They don't trust the president. They don't trust the Justice Department. They don't trust New York prosecutors or Georgia prosecutors. But his wealth is such a big part of his brand. I do think that if he's actually convicted in some of the criminal cases, now that he may have to sell assets or do something to come up with the money, does that tarnish his brand to them? Right? Swing voters or anti-Trump voters have their own view of him. But the question is with Trump voters who have their own thinking about what his brand is to them, do these things ultimately peel off some of them? If you think it's going to peel off most of them, I think that's naive. But in the 50-50 politics we live in, does it peel off some of them? Or does it give pause to Republicans who don't want to vote for Trump but really don't want to vote for Biden, so are about to hold their nose and vote for Trump? Is this enough to get them to say, oh, never mind, I can't do it. I'm going to vote for Biden. So we have 7.5 months, 7 months to the election. I think that this is one of the dynamics. Does all of this legal stuff, including this financial piece of it, so central to his brand, does it move things at least at the margins?
John, can I ask a corollary question, which is a variation on a theme? And I know you're sick of me asking a variation of the same question every week you're with us. So let's just look at 48 hours in the life of Donald Trump. In Ohio, or maybe 60 hours, it was a bloodbath if he doesn't win the election. Some migrants are not people, they're animals. Yesterday, as Marjorie and you've talked about, he couldn't make the bond, as lawyers said. Stormy Daniels' documentary comes out, and I saw an interview with the director on CNN last night where she said she was scared that she'd be murdered by the Trump people. And Trump says any Jewish person who votes for Democrats, quote, hates their religion and everything about Israel. So I guess it's the same question as the bond thing. Does the sheer weight of these things when we're laser focused for 8 months and he does it every day, is it just become background noise, or do people think about this? What's the reaction to this mass of Trumpism?
Again, this is a defining question, because if you're the Biden political team, they think the more Trump is back doing things like that, especially when he does it on just about every possible issue under the sun, right? If you're a Jewish American and you vote for the Democrats, you hate your country, you hate your the poison in the blood. There is a thought among Team Biden that the more people see Trump, especially they see chaos Trump, that it reminds them of things they might have forgotten. I think that's a defining question. Or have people learned in their old mind how I want the border shut down, or I want taxes cut, and I'll take all that other stuff because I'll just block it out. The Biden team thinks the more people see Trump in saying these chaotic, the more helps them. I think we watch the numbers and see.
You know what?
It would seem to me, Jim often asks, why doesn't this get through? And I think John just said before, they don't believe, the true Trump people don't believe any of this stuff.
Well, he said, this is not reporting on him. These are his words broadcast.
Right, but I think that they may not be broadcast where those those outlets that those people might be listening to, or if they do, they think it's some kind of trumped up thing or taken out of context. So but the Healey voters have to go somewhere. And so I guess that's the question for those people that are what we used to call normal Republicans.
I can answer that question. Chris Sununu, the governor, who savaged Trump as effing crazy and beyond.
But he
endorsed him the other day.
Well, yeah, but he's a politician. I'm wondering if the voters, if it's the same with the voters.
I'm sorry, John. Go ahead. How about the voters, the Healey voters?
No, I think it's a key question. I would love to put a body cam on Chris Sununu when he actually goes and votes to see who he actually votes for. Just saying. And how active is he late in the campaign? Does he actually go out and say nice things about Trump? Does he disappear? Or does Trump, there's 7 months. Does Trump push people like that away who don't want to vote for Trump, but who think it's in their political interest that they have to be a Republican? I think that's a great thing to watch. Much more important is the voters who are, I'm sorry, I don't mean it as an insult to the governor, but he's just one vote. So what about the thousands, tens of thousands of Healey voters across the country? I think the key point here, since we're so far from the election, even though it might seem close to some people, is to realize that this is exactly what we're going to have to do. We're going to have 10 or 12 different conversations. How does it impact people who voted for Trump once and then went to Biden last time? How does it impact Healey voters? How does it impact, the Republicans, including Trump, have been making gains among Latinos? If he's out there talking about poisoning our bloodstream, what about, Jewish voters who in some states, Jewish Democrats in some states, we're talking about tiny margins, right? And Biden has problems too. And so he has to work his issues. But in the old days, you just thought about, voters. Now, because our politics are so fractured, we just study each little slice. And sometimes even the tiny slices matter, because I'm in Arizona. It was decided by 10,000 votes and change in 2020. It does not take much.
Well, I assume you're going to talk to a lot of Latino voters in and around the border. As you're speaking to us, on your station, Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, who's co-chair of Biden-Harris 2024, is speaking to one of your colleagues. And during that conversation about 30 seconds ago, they posted numbers as of today among Latino voters likely to vote come November, 46-40 for Donald Trump. That's a really ominous sign for Joe Biden, is it not?
Oh, he can't win if those numbers stay like that. You can't win Nevada. You probably can't win Arizona. And there's a whole bunch of other states where we think about the states where we know Latinos are a giant slice of the population. Again, in a state like a Michigan or Wisconsin or Virginia, for example, which has become more of a blue state, where Latinos are 8, 10, 12, 15% of the population come election day. So no, the president can't win if the numbers stay that way. Those are a lot of working class people who are still feeling the pain of inflation. There's a big gender gap there. If you find this among black voters too, there's some sort of a Trump is macho dynamic or Trump is more manly dynamic among it. But there's no question. And you see the Biden campaign, I would argue, a little late based on my being on the road the last 6 months. But just today, the president did some Hispanic radio. They've launched a new ad in the last 24 hours aimed at Latino voters, both in English and in Spanish. They're doing the same thing, targeting black voters. And so they understand, for all we talk about Trump, Biden has weaknesses too. And Biden has to shore up some of his weaknesses with voters, especially out here in the Southwest, just absolutely critical for him to put the math together. And his puzzle, his constituency is more complicated than Trump's. Biden has more pieces, and sometimes those pieces disagree about certain issues. So it's hard. He has a harder job of bringing peace to the family, if you will. And so I do see they're back at it. To see that Biden star gets on TV, to see the ad, to see the president on the radio tells me, again, I would argue maybe a month or two late, but they suddenly have lit a fire under their you-know-whats, and they're getting to it.
We're talking to John King on his way to the Texas-Mexico border.
It's a little early for this, but I do wonder whether some of the people that are Republicans, like Liz Cheney, who's obviously turned on President Trump, or military people who were appointed by Trump and turned on him, and Mark Milley or Esper, that was the defense secretary, if we'll see more of these Republicans, even Mike Pence, coming out as we get closer to the election, really running ads and that kind of thing. People that might have some credibility with those Healey voters.
I think you're seeing, Marjorie, half of it right now, and the question is, will they do the hard part? Asa Hutchinson, saying, I can't vote for Trump, but I won't vote for Biden. You've seen a number of Republicans say things like that. That's what Mike Pence said. Right. I can't vote for Trump, but I won't vote for Biden. As we get closer to the election, do they stand up and say, you know what? You have to vote for Biden. That the country, will they do that? They will ruin their future, at least their short-term future, in a Republican Party dominated by Donald Trump. I think that is a question to watch. Maybe the math about third-party candidates will be different, and maybe you'll be able to stand up and say, vote for X, pick your third-party candidate. Yeah. But in most cases, that would help Trump. And so, I'm really interested to see, this is what they're saying in late March. What are they saying after Labor Day?
And one more thing, if I asked you this before, forgive me, but I have been just kind of fixated on Mitch McConnell, who has no political future because he's 82. I mean, he's retiring. I mean, I don't think he wants to go on.
Well, he's finishing his term, but he's not retiring. He's not running for the leadership position of the Republicans again.
Oh, I thought he was retiring altogether.
He's not leaving right now. He's leaving at the end of his term, John. Is he?
Yeah, at the end of his term.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But I'm saying he's not going to be up for re-election again.
Right,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes,
he doesn't have to run for re-election anymore. He's 82. 80-something years old. Trump insulted his wife. I'm wondering why he feels the need to still be supporting the former president. It seems so odd. When you look at what you think he might have to gain, which is some self-respect and maybe make his wife happy, why would he do this?
Because he has. And you will put you will always put the party at a. But again, I would say in October. But there's no question. I get your point. On principle, you just roll your eyes.
Yeah.
He attacks his wife. Look at Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. There's a whole long list of these people who don't want the phone ringing off the hook, don't want protesters outside their house. And in some cases, like McConnell, even though he's leaving, want the majority back and does not want to be blamed if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, okay. I think you were saying, because you cut out for a little bit, could you tell what he was saying? I couldn't tell what he was saying about McConnell.
Well, they just says because he wants a Republican majority to take over, a Republican majority in the Senate, and he doesn't want to be accused of breaking that up. John, since you are breaking up, one last question, then we'll let you go. What specifically are you doing in and around the border? Or
part of our All Over the Map series, and we're putting together these the battleground states who are here in Arizona because immigration is such a huge issue. We're going to do a few. We're headed to the Gaza list, which is from the border, just to see if people who live in these border towns who deal.
We're losing John.
We're losing you, John.
We did hear, John, thank you. We're sorry for the difficulty. John's on his way to the border, was kind enough to try us anyway. And he says, obviously, with immigration being a huge issue, he's going to the border towns for his spectacular, all over the map. I mean, real voters, I've said this a million times with John here, but it's open up to him in ways that lots of voters don't do, particularly in light of the fact that CNN is seen as the enemy by so many Trump fans, and his skills and respect for people is such that everybody opens up to him, which is, I think, a real value to all of us.
And you hear the reasoning behind people's choice of former President Trump.
Huge.
And a lot of them seem like terrific people. Their politics are very different from mine, obviously. But anyway, we're sorry about John King today, but he was in just a bad cell zone, obviously. But on the bright side, this gives us more time to talk about the story du jour, which, of course, is where is Kate Middleton? This seems to have transfixed not only every single British tabloid and British TV station, but it has transfixed half of the nation. We haven't seen her since Christmas. Where is she? So we're going to talk about Kate Middleton up next. Listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We know Jim doesn't like the Royals very much, but he seems to have been enticed by the tale of Kate. Listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, the four characters in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play Cost of Living are isolated by disability or poverty. They want love, they want dignity, they want understanding and care. What they don't want is pity. We'll talk to two of the actors starring in the production, which is on stage now in Boston. That's on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you. And the Museum of Science, where their new exhibit, Changing Landscapes, an Immersive Journey, transports you to iconic spots around the globe to see how people are adapting to a changing climate. More at MOS.org. And Central Square Theater, presenting Beyond Words, a new play inspired by the life of Dr. Irene Pepperberg and the African gray parrot Alex, now through April 14th. Tickets at centralsquaretheater.org.
Gives me chills. Let's let it play for a minute just to get you in the mood. It's lovely. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the Boston Public Library. Stream at youtube.com. NPR.com/GBH News. Today, till the end of the show, we're taking our cues from The Sun. That's a Murdoch-owned British tabloid, sort of. A recent headline implores people to, quote, lay off Kate and to stop bullying the Princess of Wales over her supposed poor Photoshop skills. But there's more than meets the eye, apparently, as any royal watcher will tell you.
Now, tongues were wagging. Lady Rose is a former model. Her husband's significantly older than she is. Prince William's father, famous for an affair that ended his marriage to the most popular woman in the world, Princess Diana. So while some of the papers didn't blatantly report an affair, it was the immediate assumption. Why else would two women be at war?
And this is, it's the Merchants of Culloden or whatever. The
Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Whatever. Thank you. We'll play that again in a minute. If you haven't been following, what is that?
The Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Whatever, okay. If you haven't been following the story closely, congrats, you've been living under a rock. Apparently, like Princess Kate herself, the Princess of Wales hasn't been seen publicly, Trenni said, since December 17th. So I'll get to this in a minute, relax. Following planned abdominal surgery. Then earlier this month, you all have seen the photo 1,000 times of her with her 3 kids. Obviously photoshopped, she admitted she was made to apologize for her poor editing ability, assuming she really did it. But the internet sleuths aren't buying it, nor are they backing down after a video surfaced this week of Kate and her husband, William, allegedly out at a farm stand a mile from their home. We want to hear from you about your theories, the most outlandish, the better. This is the type of conspiracy theory that we can really get behind here on the show. The number's 877-301-8970.
And I just wanted to point out that Jim, purports to be a man interested in issues and policy, far too serious to have any concern about the royals, what the royals is doing.
What are you talking about?
You have been over there all morning long studying the photograph of Kate.
Maybe I have. It's a news story that's grabbing the world.
Looking up the Marchioness of Cholmondeley to see how
good-looking
she is. Well, is she Rose Hanbury?
Yes, she is.
The one and the same person.
Yes, she is.
Because I was beginning to get concerned. There were 2 alleged affairs.
Oh, my God.
But now they're one and the same person. Rose Hanbury, who apparently was, as you said...
What is she again?
Well, she's
the Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We don't know who that is, but it's somebody who's co-hosting your show today.
Yes, she's the Marchioness of Cholmondeley, and she's apparently a former model who's married to a much older man, and the allegation, of course, is that the falling out was about this affair.
Whoa. Even I know this. It's not just about the affair. Here's a clip from 60 Minutes Australia that says there may be other theories that are sort of credible. Here it is.
Okay.
From a Brazilian butt lift on the Royal Derriere to a haircut gone wrong, speculation has been as ludicrous as it's been exhaustive.
She's in a coma, she's had a facelift.
I think it's the Brazilian butt lift myself. 877-301-8970. Really 2 questions. 1, we'd like you to speculate irresponsibly on what's really going on. And 2, I have to admit, if you're like me and has been critical of people like Marjorie for years for their interest in the royals,
swept up.
This one is impossible to avoid, even for the likes of me. The number's 877-301-8970. Is this real? Who gave us this photograph? This is a Dublin airport. Is this real? An official? Oh my goodness, Zoe says. This is a Dublin airport official Twitter account. This doesn't look like her either.
No, it doesn't.
It says, great to see passengers looking so happy and relaxed this morning. She looks like Ivanka Trump. That is not her. 877-30. Look at Marjorie. I hope you're watching.
That's not her. No, I don't think it's
That's
Kate.
not him either.
Her hair seems to be
Unless
standing
he's with the
up.
Marchioness of Canterbury or whoever she is. He is definitely not with Kate in this photo.
As I was saying before, they can't call her Rose Hanbury.
Why not?
Because she's the Marchioness of
Cholmondeley.
Right.
What does Marchioness mean?
I have no idea. I guess it's you're linked to the royal family or something like that.
Okay.
Now, Beth Teitel, of course, has been all over this Kate Middleton
so.
story. She's a great writer for the Boston Globe that writes about, I don't know what her topic is, but she writes a lot about stuff like this.
Yeah.
And she's saying that it's no wonder that we're transfixed because, the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift
It's sort of run its course.
It's kind of run its course after the Super Bowl. And what is left to mock about Senator Katie Britt, her State of the Union rebuttal? We've really wrestled
Let me interrupt
that baby
you.
to the ground.
Here's a tweet from the New York Sanitation Department with a clearly photoshopped Kate. It says, Kate's been found. She's putting her trash out in the bins. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of speculation, as Beth points out, about what's happened. That people are whispering conspiracy theories. She's had a mental breakdown.
You don't know.
She jumped the line for an organ transplant.
Yep.
She's been disappeared. That's a pretty horrific one.
Yeah.
Or as somebody said before, she might be in a coma. One of our texters thinks she went in to have a hysterectomy. She didn't want to talk about it. Planned abdominal surgery. That's in the general area where you'd be having a hysterectomy. But we just don't know. And the tabloids in Britain, which I love because they're just down and dirty.
A lot of them too, right?
There's a lot of them. Yeah. I think there's about 11 or 12. Wouldn't that be great in London? Wouldn't they, all these tabloids dishing all the dirt, the Daily Mirror, the Daily Sun.
Well, you know what the problem in this country?
They have a naked woman on page 3.
I know the tabloids in America are not as tabloidy as they used to be. They're really disappointing.
Rupert Murdoch, that was the thing. I remember when Rupert Murdoch first bought the Herald a million years ago.
You interviewed him when he took over.
Yes, and I was there when he brought in these Australians and these Brits to run the paper. And I mean, they were running these stories. And let me tell you, back in the day, Filene's and Jordan Marsh, they were not
said,
sure.
we don't want any naked bodies?
They were not sure if they wanted to go quite so far.
Is that really what it was?
Oh, yes. And they had to.
I didn't know that.
They're really raunchy over there, the British tabloids. Anyway, Ellen from Duxbury, what do you think?
Hi, Ellen.
I think it's a dirty trick from the Trump campaign because Kate's there, but
this woman's a genius.
They're trying to make Americans, which we love shiny objects and deflection, get off the fact we haven't seen Melania.
You are a genius.
That is a very good point.
You are a total genius. That is exactly what's going on.
Perhaps Melania has had a mental breakdown or is jumping the line for an organ transplant, or perhaps she too
has been disappeared. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you for the call.
That's a great point. Have you seen her with him at a single court event? Usually, when you're the defendant, as Mr. Trump is, you walk in holding hands with your wife. That's what you do, correct? We haven't seen her in weeks, have we?
Yeah, he's hoping he can hold hands with Stormy Daniels when that trial starts. Hopefully in the end of April. By the way,
Melania has had enough.
You know, that little clip, she is one smart person who really, Stormy Daniels is an impressive.
Yeah.
I've seen her, remember when Michael Avenatti, who's in jail now for 20 years, her lawyer was running for president for a week. I remember the press conferences, they were brief. There were extended clips last night on CNN. And it's a really painful story.
I mean, it is a painful story.
He corners her when she comes out of the bathroom, according to her, and in a scary sort of way. She was scared for her life, she says, and I find it totally credible.
Well, I think what Stormy Daniels got into I don't think you necessarily want your daughter to grow up and become a porn star, but she quickly segued into running these movies.
But she's a big business person.
Yeah, she's a big business person, and it's, again, not the industry you maybe want to have your family members involved in, but she is very successful in what is a tough industry. Sharon in Brookfield, thank you for calling.
Hello, Sharon.
Hello there. My completely unsubstantiated, let me turn my radio down.
Please, yes.
I'm hearing myself.
That's okay.
My completely unsubstantiated theory is that the princess has had some sort of surgery connected with inflammatory bowel disease.
Why'd you conclude that?
Well, I had a family member who went through this, and Princess Catherine has lost an awful lot of weight, which is a symptom because your digestive tract doesn't work the way it should. Yeah. And they said she had recent abdominal surgery, and also she had very severe morning sickness.
Wait a second. How do we know she lost some weight? Because the only thing we've seen was that video that isn't really her anyway.
Didn't you see her before? She weighed about 75 pounds.
But we haven't seen her since the surgery.
But we saw her before the surgery.
No, but she's talking about since the surgery.
But I think you lose weight
prior. No. I'm talking about before.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see. Okay. So you're ruling out a Brazilian butt lift. Is that correct?
Yes, I am, actually.
Okay. I want to be clear. No, I'm just asking. I feel I have to.
The recovery period for the surgery is extensive, and it's very uncomfortable.
Oh.
So,
well, now I feel bad that we're making light of this. Sharon, that was an excellent call. I'm serious. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have a lot of people speculating about some kind of bowel problem. Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis.
Yeah. But no one, this is all speculation.
We have no idea.
You didn't know about the video until a while ago.
The farm stand.
You looked at the video. Is that her in the farm stand?
Well, it looks like her.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It does not look like her.
It doesn't. Okay. We don't know where she is, but there's a lot of speculation.
Do you know what else Stormy Daniels said? I'm sorry to get back to this. She said that when she met Trump, and she had no idea anything was going to happen along the lines of what did happen, that Trump said that she reminded her of his daughter, Ivanka. And then he proceeded, according to her, to assault her in his hotel room. I mean...
Well, you know what he told Howard Stern, the radio talk
If she
host,
wasn't my daughter...
I'd be sleeping with her.
Oh, did he say sleeping or dating her? I hope he didn't say sleeping with her.
I shouldn't have said that.
I mean, dating is bad enough.
Dating is bad enough, yeah.
877-301-8970 is the number.
You know, I got to tell you that there is a lot of interest in where is Kate Middleton.
It's huge.
Many people are speculating that she's with Melania, and together they're plotting their next move. I love that. Okay, let's go to, where are we going here? I don't know yet. Meanwhile,
Will becomes the president, not the president. Will becomes the king if Charles resigns or...
A texter is telling me that Melania greeted Viktor Orban in Mar-a-Lago.
Is that
when he
really
came to visit.
true?
I don't know. Someone's saying Kate had a mommy tuck, but I don't believe that because there would be nothing to tuck there because she is so skinny. Yeah.
Why do you think, by the way, we haven't discussed this, primarily because this time I'm into this too, I'm embarrassed to say, why is there such fascination with this? I mean,
the royals?
No, well, not the royals in general, this.
Because there's fascination with the royals in general. I mean, millions of people.
Why do I care?
Millions of people
Why do
watch
I
The
care?
Crown. I don't know. You've had you changed your mind about these things, but millions of people watch The Crown on television. It's one of the best watched shows, and it was a great show. Went way back to Elizabeth and her husband.
But even before The Crown, people were obsessed with all this stuff.
Listen, Princess Diana. I mean, I think the whole world was obsessed with Princess Diana. And by the way, if William is carrying on with the what's her name?
I don't know. What's her name again?
The Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Thank you. Let's just ask that person. What's the problem? Just ask the person when you can't think of what it is.
If he is carrying on with her, this will be a repeat. And if Kate didn't, in fact, call her rural rival, it would be reminiscent of Princess Diana.
How do we know she called her rural rival?
One of the British tabloids that you shouldn't believe reported on
What's her name one more time, please?
The Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Exactly. That's what we're talking about.
Remember what Princess Diana called Camilla Parker Bowles?
What did she call her?
The Rottweiler.
She did.
And she famously
she's
said
the queen now, right?
Yeah. I don't know if she's the queen.
Queen sort of. I think it's called Queen sort of.
I think it's the king's consort, isn't it?
That's pretty. I think that is. Is that weird, by the way?
And Camilla, she said that there were 3 people in the marriage, but people. I've always told the story. I got a chance when I was when Princess Diana was
killed,
to the
funeral.
Tragically going to the funeral, and it was unbelievable, the outpouring, because she had issues. She was lonely. She didn't know what she was doing. She was thrust into this spotlight.
I understand that, though.
She had bulimia.
Well, she was also doing. You used to mock. I mocked you, and then you explained to me she did a lot of really important things around landmines and things like that.
She did.
And didn't she do something with a kid with AIDS, or am I confusing?
She did stuff.
It was historic.
She did stuff with AIDS too.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a woman with a lot of compassion, and I think a lot of people could relate to someone who was being actively cheated on by their husband.
But people don't even know who this woman is. This Kate, whatever her name, Kate Marchioness or whatever.
The Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Exactly. I didn't mean her. I meant the thing with the whatever.
She's allegedly the mistress.
Sorry.
Kate Middleton is the future
But people
queen.
don't know anything about her either.
They do. They've followed the romance.
What do you know about? Don't look at your notes. Tell me what you know about this woman, other than the fact she's married to William. If he's king, she's queen. I know. Even I know that. Tell me one thing you know about her.
I know that she's the mother of 3 children.
Okay,
that
allegedly.
She's got very long, dark brown hair, and she's a very, very pretty woman who is very,
Which
very
means you
thin.
know nothing about her.
I know nothing
about her. And you're incredibly interested.
Jeffrey.
As far as you know, he's married to, what's the woman's name again?
The Marchioness of Cholmondeley.
Exactly. You don't even know. Let's go to Jeffrey in North Attleboro. You're next. This is pathetic. On Boston Public Radio. It's Marjorie's fault, not mine. Go ahead.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah.
I believe that they've frozen and taken Queen Elizabeth's brain and transplanting it into Kate's head so she can relive her reign as Queen of England.
You're a genius.
God save the Queen.
You are a genius. Jeffrey, thanks for that contribution. Listen to this. I remember seeing this photograph, as I'm sure you all do. In April of '87, Princess Diana opened the UK's first all-purpose, I guess, HIV/AIDS unit that exclusively cared for patients infected with the virus. This is in London. In front of the world's media, Princess Diana shook the hand, I remember this, of a man suffering with the illness. She did so without gloves, publicly challenging the notion that HIV/AIDS was passed from person to person. by touch. That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that is huge.
Like I said, I think she was maybe in those days we had to have the virginal future queen, so they sent her to the royal gynecologist, and she was very young, and she was a daycare teacher.
But she's done all this stuff. Kate essentially is a photo editor. I mean, that's essentially all we know about her.
We'll see what Kate does. I mean, she hasn't really had a chance yet. Now, Bartholomew from Puppy Grave, Indiana, has texted and says, you keep talking about the Marchioness of Chambray.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, totally ignoring
Okay, this is when Marjorie loses it. Go ahead.
her wonderful spouse.
Okay, the who?
The Marchioness of Chumley.
No, that's the woman. Who's her spouse? I'm sorry, Marjorie. We're not going to cover for you here. We're going to wait until Marjorie can read this. Go ahead. Who is
the
it?
The Martian of Chambray.
That's a pretty good one. Man, we're going to get fired at the end of the show, I think.
Interplanetary airport.
Megan and Whitman, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hi, Megan. How are you? What's going on?
Hi. I was just curious what all this hoo-ha is about.
Exactly.
Because they said she was going to have surgery, planned surgery, and she wouldn't be making any public appearances until after Easter.
That's correct.
Yeah, but then she did the phony photograph. Why'd she do the phony photograph?
She did.
I'm serious, Megan. That sort of blew the whole thing, right?
Well, I think it was a little blown before that, and then it just took off because people were like, where is she, where is she? But we shouldn't be planning to see her until after Easter.
That is such a grown-up position.
She's just hiding out from the crazy public.
You might be right, Megan. That's an excellent call. You're probably right.
We have a few more theories.
What do they say?
She's had enough, and she's left the United States to be with Harry, Meghan, and Archie. That's one possibility.
Who's Archie?
Archie is their kid.
Oh, I actually knew
she's
that. Okay.
Harry and Meghan's kid.
I think they have more than one, but okay.
They do?
They don't?
Oh, I think they do.
They do.
I'm not sure who the second kid is. Or
you know who the second kid is? The Marchioness of Chambray, or wherever it is.
And
Thank you.
then Cara in Belmont is absolutely right. She says the number of text threads, Slack messages, Instagram, and TikTok videos I have read, responded to, or shared on this precise subject is embarrassing, but she appreciates that we're working to get to the bottom of it and whether or not Will is carrying on with the...
Exactly.
Marchioness.
The Marchioness of
Thank you. A little slow there.
The Marchioness of Chumley.
Okay, twice is not necessary. Now, let me say one thing here, which you sort of denied the listeners this information. Hanbury, who is the Marchioness of whatever, and Kate, you didn't tell me this, were friends for years.
They were.
This is according to Yahoo.com. And in 2019, The Sun, that's that newspaper, published a piece saying the two had a falling out, which nearly left both getting legal action in response. What was that about?
Well, that was the thing, that they thought that this was because of an affair that began in 2017.
Oh, the legal action was around that?
And continued until 2019, and maybe is continuing even to 2024.
Yes.
And apparently the Marchioness is married to a much older man, so they're thinking that she would prefer a little carrying on with the future prince. We hope
King,
he's not,
future king. He's the current prince.
He's current prince. We hope this is not true, of course.
We do.
But you just never know. I mean, but this doesn't really compare with the scandals that we've had previously.
Like what?
Well, when the Prince of Wales, who is now the King of England,
Charles,
that's when he talked about how he wanted to live
in her trousers.
In the trousers.
He did say that. He did say he wanted to live in her trousers.
He wanted to live in her trousers.
It was
of
honest.
Camilla Parker Bowles. But a lot of us kind of like
Bowles,
this.
wasn't it?
Bowles, B-O-W-L-E-S,
Yeah, Bowles, yeah.
the Rottweiler, as Princess Diana called her.
Yeah.
But a lot of us kind of like that because Diana was obviously much younger than the future king, Charles, and a gorgeous-looking woman, whereas Camilla Parker Bowles is much older and not nearly as attractive. So we kind of like the idea that the true love of the king was a much older and less attractive woman than the hot little number.
I don't want to be naive, but could you explain in some detail, when he said he wanted to live in her trousers, what did he mean exacwell?
Well, he said he wanted to be your tampon.
He did say that, by the way. He said that, too.
That was pretty outrageous.
That is outrageous.
That was when the Queen of England
That was the king said that?
Well, he wasn't the king then. He was the future king. And that was when Queen Elizabeth, in her droll way...
said that's enough.
No, said it was... She said in Latin, and I can't say it in Latin.
What's tampon in Latin?
No. No, not the annus horribilis. Remember, she said it was the worst year of her life because of the tampon incident, because there was a fire at Windsor Castle. Because
how do we know,
by the
way, how do we know he said these things? How do you know he said these things?
Oh, you know what?
Good.
Diane from Newton
What'd she say?
is worried that Kate has anorexia. challenging and persistent disease. We have no idea about any of this. This is all uninformed speculation.
It's irresponsible.
And here's another bit of uninformed speculation. Yeah. Vicky from Brooklyn, Connecticut says, Kate is preggers with Harry's baby.
It's really not funny, so let's not laugh at that. By the way, again, this is Marjorie's idea. Celia in Holliston, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about what everybody's talking about. Kate in Middleton, hi. Yeah,
Good
Celia.
afternoon. I live over here. I'm from Holliston. But
oh my God!
From England.
Okay,
oh my God, Celia, we're so glad you called.
Go ahead, Celia.
I love William and Kate, and I'm finding this conversation a little disrespectful.
And explain why, because I am too.
Well,
and I know
it is disrespectful.
You're directing it at Marjorie, obviously.
It's very disrespectful to me. I would never talk about the president of your country. Yeah. In the way that you are talking about my royal family.
That's actually a pretty
we're guilty.
Let
her finish. Go ahead, Celia. Go ahead. You're right to criticize us. Go ahead.
That's what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say I listen to you very often and I enjoy your show, but I'm finding this very disrespectful.
Okay, well, we're going to...
I wouldn't speak...
About the president that way?
I wouldn't speak about your president.
Okay. Can I ask you one?
I just think the comments ought to be a bit more respectful.
Okay, and we appreciate that.
You're right. We are being
And
disrespectful,
we will be for the rest of the show. Celia,
but what do you think? What do you think is happening, Celia?
For Celia,
what do you think is going on with Kate?
I'm not sure. I wish they would give a little bit more information about what's going on with her, so there's not all this speculation.
Yeah.
But again, she's a mother, she's a wife, she deserves her privacy.
Celia, one more thing.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people say, and, you know, I know that people in England are divided, but there's a lot of people who just love the royals, and there's all the royal watchers that comment on these things. But many people will say, why are Americans obsessed? And we are obsessed because, after all, we had the Revolutionary War to be free of the British, but we love British movies, and we love The Crown, and we love the, you know, all those TV shows that are about the Brits. So why do you think we are as fascinated as we are, clearly, with this?
Oh, well, they're fascinating. They're a fascinating family. I love them. I'm fascinated by them. I watch them and follow them. And it's just tradition.
Okay.
Okay, let me tell you, Celia,
we hope.
You put us in our place. I have to say, you did. It was very respectful. Your criticism.
Do you think William is carrying on with the Martian?
No, let's not. No, we're not doing that. Celia, thank you, and I'm glad you got through. And Marjorie is embarrassed about how she's behaved. No, she is.
It was a disrespectful conversation, absolutely, because we
didn't mean any harm, though.
We didn't mean any harm, but we are obsessed. Everyone is obsessed. The entire country is obsessed.
But Celia's right. She's not saying anything about Joe Biden.
You know what the British tabloids are doing?
Donald Trump is.
They're making a lot of money off this, and newspapers need to make a lot of money, so we're very happy about that.
How lucky are we that Celia was the last call rather than an early call? What would we have done then?
We would have been ashamed of ourselves.
Okay,
but you know what?
We're done.
You would have kept right on going.
Maybe so.
Okay, keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. If you haven't heard enough of us already, tomorrow, national security expert Juliet Keim is going to join us back here at the Boston Public Library. Going to be here tomorrow. Naturalist Cy Montgomery with a great new book about the octopus.
Did you see that book?
Yes,
she
it's gorgeous.
Is amazing.
GBH's Jared Bowen, Bay State Banner's Ron Mitchell. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to our Boston Public Radio staff, Maddie Geyer, Sandra Lopez Burke, Carly Corcoran, and Isabella Caron. Thanks.